Someone once posed a question: if you could have endless wealth in this world, but the price is being hunted by a snail, and you can deal with it however you want, would you accept? The snail can only crawl 8.5 meters per hour, while humans can walk 5,000 meters. The difference is just too huge. So our protagonist didn't even think twice before agreeing. But that very night, a dark figure broke through the door. The protagonist stammered in shock. "What brings you here, miss?" With cold eyes that seemed to hold a hint of disdain, she replied, Target elimination." With that, she swung her massive scythe at him. Fortunately, the protagonist reacted quickly. He ducked down and escaped. As gold coins from the treasure chest behind him scattered across the floor, she remained unmoved, her gaze growing even darker. That's when the protagonist finally understood, swallowing hard and saying, "I get it now." The snail evolved. Then he turned and ran. But surprisingly, she just stood there motionless. From then on, whenever Sunday midnight struck, the evolved snail would appear in the protagonist's life. No matter where he went, whether to the ends of the earth, remote mountains, steep cliffs, or even in a chicken coop, the protagonist had grown weary, feeling completely broken. "Isn't this completely deceptive? I am really tired hearing this." The snail raised her 40-meter-long scythe. The protagonist immediately became scared and changed his mind. "Sorry, I'd rather not die first." At this time, the protagonist arrived at the foot of a castle, thinking to himself, as expected of the rumored Goblin King's castle, "Just looking at it exudes murderous intent. If I get captured and taken inside, even she won't be able to do anything to me." While he was thinking about how to get in, two goblins at the gate shouted at him, "Hey, human, get lost. This isn't a place for you unless you want us to drag you inside." The protagonist thought, "Isn't this exactly what I want? This is too easy." He immediately put on an annoying expression. He even patted his own behind, saying, "I won't leave unless you drag me inside." The goblins thought, "What's wrong with humans these days? Making such demands is really too much. We'll have to teach you a lesson." In the castle's prison, the protagonist was frantically writing in his diary, "I regret it. I really regret it. There's no such thing as a free lunch. I just didn't expect this pie would be so heavy." Fate had already marked everything with a price. Just then, a voice called from the neighboring cell, "Mr. Isso, what are you doing?" The protagonist named Isso slowly put away his diary and said, "Nothing much. Just writing a book. Is something wrong?" Nona heard this and asked puzzledly, "You can write whatever you want, but why are you smiling while writing? Do you have to smile even when writing your will?" Isso smiled reassuringly and said, "Why look so gloomy? Isn't this place quite nice?" Nona looked at Isso in disbelief and exclaimed, "How can you say this place is nice? This is the Goblin King's castle. The Goblin King is one of the strongest beings in the kingdom. Having been stationed here for years, the security is incredibly tight, with countless mechanical traps. Even the kingdom's holy knights wouldn't be confident in conquering this place. I heard that a duke once led an army to attack this place to rescue his kidnapped daughter, but they were completely wiped out by the invincible Goblin King." This made Isso suddenly shout excitedly, "Is that true? If the Goblin King is really that powerful, then even she won't be able to make it here alive." He burst into laughter. Nona looked at the laughing Isso with tears in her eyes, and suddenly started crying. Feeling hopeless inside, thinking father still hasn't come and the humans in the prison keep disappearing. "I might be next. I should at least leave a will or something, even if no one sees it." She turned to Isso, who was humming a tune, and asked, "Mr. Isso, could you lend me your paper and pen? I want to leave a will too. Just tear off one sheet for me. I don't want to die without leaving any trace." Isso immediately replied, "Oh, I won't." Nona was about to thank him, but then realized what he'd said. After making sure she hadn't misheard, she shouted at Isso, "Why won't you give it to me?" Isso explained matter-of-factly, "Because this notebook's paper is special. It's very hard to tear. This is my diary, my will. How could I just give it to others?" Nona shouted in frustration, "We're about to die anyway. Why care about such things? Why are you being so full of yourself? Why are you being so stingy? I won't read your diary. Just give it to me quickly. If you don't give it to me, I'll bite you." She stuck her head through the bars and moved it back and forth, suddenly realizing the gravity of the situation. Isso and Nona's eyes met in an extremely awkward moment. Nona had no choice but to say, with tears streaming down her face, "Stop staring and help me. I'm stuck and can't move." This scene made Isso burst out laughing, but just as he was about to help, A clanging sound came from outside, and Isso's expression immediately darkened. The midnight bell rang, and the next second, the ceiling began to shake, threatening to collapse. She's here. She still came. The snail who, very professionally, comes to take my life every Sunday at midnight, no matter where I am. Holding the Goblin King's head, she slowly walked up to Isso, with the same emotionless eyes looking at him. With a boom, a huge hole was blasted in the wall. She walked towards the kneeling Isso with her scythe, raised it to strike. This time it's really going to be killed. Nona, watching this scene, thought she was about to die too, and burst into loud tears. This successfully drew the snail's attention. Isso saw his chance and thought, now's the time. He pulled out a smoke bomb from his backpack, and threw it at his feet, then said, I'm really sorry, Miss Snail. You won't be able to kill me this time. Next time, for sure. The snail above watched Isso escape, turned and took out her frustration on the Goblin King's head, kicking it down, wishing she could crush him to death. Meanwhile, at the foot of the castle, a pair of large eyes stared intently at the entrance. Suddenly realized something, he shouted at the mercenaries beside him. You're mercenaries, right? So why haven't you started attacking yet? Didn't you say you'd take action as soon as we got here? I paid you so much money. Can't you move a little faster? Just thinking about what those dirty, dangerous, lowly goblins might do to my daughter overnight. I don't even dare to imagine. Please save my daughter quickly. The lead mercenary heard this and responded righteously. Report, Mr. Konda. First don't panic, and then continue not to panic. After a lot of empty words, he thought to himself, your daughter has been captured for half a month. Whatever was going to happen has already happened. If they hadn't paid so much, why would we have been tricked into coming? Recalling the scene of being tricked, a large bag of gold coins appeared in everyone's view. Mr. Konde even gestured and said, 2 bags up on the platform. The lead mercenary declared righteously. Brothers charge. Let's defeat the Goblin King. On the way, passers-by whispered, they dared to take this job. They really value money over life. No wonder they're from out of town. Must have been tricked. Poor them. Now we know why they were paid so much. Is the Goblin King really that strong? But we've already taken the money. If we back out now, our reputation would be ruined. But what good is reputation? If you're dead, maybe we should just run. Mr. Candy watched from the side, unable to take it anymore. He jumped up and shouted, hurry up and attack. It's already late at night. It'll be dawn soon. The leader ordered the attack. But at that moment, from the castle atop the cliff came a tremendous sound, and a figure came plummeting down. Isso had just landed and was thinking about what to do next, when he suddenly realized he was surrounded by many people before he could ask. Conde stared intently at the familiar figure Isso was carrying, and anxiously shouted, Nona, my daughter. A barely conscious Nona slowly turned her head, looked at her father, and immediately burst into tears, then fainted. Conde instantly rushed to Isso's front, grabbed his collar angrily and said, you little punk, what did you do to my daughter? I'm going to. Before he could finish, suddenly, the Goblin King's head fell from above, blood splattering everywhere. Isso said angrily, what a useless thing. I was wrong about you. This operation made everyone present shudder. Instantly, Nona's father immediately changed his attitude and approached, saying, you're amazing. You actually killed the Goblin King. This is truly a blessing for us common folk. This reaction left Isso standing there in disbelief. The scene shifts to Conde's house in Halo City. With a snap, Isso gritted his teeth and said, angrily, why can't I kill that thing? This is so frustrating. Outside the door, father and daughter pressed against it, eavesdropping. Nona asked her father in confusion, what's wrong with Mr. Isso? He sounds very angry. Her father pursed his lips and said, knowingly, this must be what they call the eccentricities of legendary figures. Come, let's not stay here. Let's talk in our room. The father slowly put down his teacup and said, I initially thought he was just a nameless, strong warrior. I even thought about recruiting him under my command. But fortunately, your father was cautious enough. I had my men gather information about him from all around, and what I found was shocking. Mr. Isso actually has a well-known nickname in the South Border. People call him the Solitary Hero. Nona found this increasingly odd. That name is so Chuan of you, isn't it? She looked completely unconvinced. The father saw his daughter's expression and explained, don't doubt it. Your father's intelligence has never been wrong. Then he mysteriously continued, let me tell you another secret. You think this is the first time he's done something like this? You're very wrong. He used to infiltrate demon lairs all by himself. And not just once, all to eliminate those harmful monsters from the root. What incredible bravery. Just like your father's glorious past, it's so magnificent. Nona complained disapprovingly at this time. Is that so? So that's why he was so happy in prison. Her father seemed not to hear, continuing enthusiastically. Anyway, there are many rumors about Mr. Isso. Among all the true and false stories, the consistent ones should be true. First, Mr. Isso always carries a diary, where he records all those vicious monsters. Whenever he defeats a monster, he crosses its name off the list. Meanwhile, Isso was thinking hatefully, "Damn it, useless Goblin King. The first thought, you'd be my savior, but you couldn't even handle a snail." Second, Mr. Isso has a mechanical glider. He uses it to quickly escape after successfully defeating monsters, keeping a low profile. Isso looked at his glider and said, confidently, "You're still the best. Number one for escaping. Without you, I would have been killed by that snail hundreds of times by now." Third, many people who happened to pass by when Mr. Isso was fighting, they all heard him shouting, "Help, help." At this point, Nona asked in confusion, "Why is that?" Her father cleared his throat, building suspense before continuing. At first, nobody knew why, but later, when people saw the bloody scenes, they finally understood. Mr. Isso doesn't want to be lost in endless killing, even though it's for justice. His heart yearns for love and peace. He hopes someone can save him. Meanwhile, Isso was lying on the table thinking, "Help someone. Please, help me. Kill her for me. I'm begging you." By now, Nona had been successfully brainwashed and was deeply moved. Her father continued next, and what I admire most. Even though Mr. Isso doesn't like fighting, you could say he absolutely hates it. He often feels extremely exhausted after each bloody battle, but you could say he never rests. He always finishes battles in an extremely short time, then immediately jumps into the next battle to save more humans. This is the solitary hero. As long as there are demons in this world, he will stand at the front, never stopping. Isso lay desperately on the sofa, his heart seemingly screaming, "Coming so punctually to kill me every time. Just let me rest a bit. I'm really too tired. Not even giving me legal holidays. That's too much." Her father's speech reached its climax. "This is our great Mr. Isso. He is my god." Nona listened until she was trembling, stammering, "Father, he is so great. Such a great person. I want number. I must marry him." These words stunned her father. Wait a minute. To please Isso, she made coffee by hand, and cake, and delicious chicken soup. She even suggested playing games together. Asked, "If you had such a perfect and virtuous girlfriend, what time would you come home from work?" But our Isso didn't see it that way, only finding it noisy. His mind full of thoughts about how to deal with the snail next. He refused everything and asked, instead, "Don't you have anything else to do?" "Never mind. I'll go for a walk." We all know that people in love don't think very clearly. When Nona heard this, her brain automatically translated it into going on a date. Her heart bloomed with joy, ready to set out at any moment. She obediently followed behind Isso, thinking to herself, "I never expected to reach the dating stage so quickly." Now, girls who want to find a partner, pay attention. Dating skills, dating location and initiative. As everyone knows, men are creatures who dislike trouble when there's no clear destination. That's when the opportunity comes. Taking the initiative to suggest where to go not only decides the destination, but also seems to give men the chance to choose. It's simply perfect. Nona giggled to herself, quickly, "Fall into my brilliant trap." Then, appearing very natural, she stepped forward and asked Mr. Isso, "Where would you like to walk?" But what Nona didn't expect was that Isso immediately replied decisively to the alchemy workshop. When Nona heard this, it was like a bolt from the blue. This was completely different from the script. While still in shock, they had already arrived at the workshop. The undaunted Nona didn't lose heart. She moved closer. This is the largest and best alchemy workshop in Halo City. The clerk, seeing customers arrive, asked what they wanted to make. Isso took out a blueprint from his pocket and handed it over. "I want to make a set of mechanical puppets." But to Isso's surprise, the clerk immediately turned and refused. Nona saw this as her chance, thinking, "I can't believe Mr. Isso would make such a basic mistake. Mechanical puppets are items that even ordinary craftsmen can make. How could noble alchemists possibly accept such work? Wouldn't that be beneath them?" Then, as the daughter of this workshop's major shareholder, it's my turn to step in. But just then, Isso did something that shocked everyone. Isso pulled out a bag full of gold coins and threw it on the table, making Nona jump in surprise. This won't do. Doesn't Mr. Isso know that using money with noble alchemists is like trampling on their dignity? That is terrible. It's all over. Just when the clerk was about to lose his temper, Isso didn't say a word and threw down another bag. This made the clerk even more angry, and he shouted, "You are insulting my dignity." Just as he finished speaking, Isso unleashed his superpower. Boom, boom, bang. Several more bags of gold coins crashed onto the table. The clerk seemed to be drowning in gold coins, unable to break free. But just then, another alchemist next to him slammed the table, snapping him out of his trance. "Enough already, you esteemed customer. I'll take this job." By now, Nona was completely dumbfounded, deeply shocked by the power of money. A moment later, the workshop became busy. Isso watched the busy clerk and asked, "How's this glider puppet?" The clerk carefully examined it, and couldn't help but marvel. This mechanical puppet is made so exquisitely. It doesn't look like the work of an ordinary craftsman. Just needs a little reconditioning. Isso heard this and slowly said, "Brother, you've got a good eye. This device indeed isn't made by a craftsman. It was also made by an alchemist, someone called Stell or something." The next second, the clerk's hand stopped. Trembling with excitement, he asked, "Could you be talking about Master Stell Jas? This is unbelievable. He's the most famous master alchemist in the kingdom. Everyone here knows his name. He's a legendary figure among alchemists. But why would Master still make something like a mechanical puppet?" Isso could only answer helplessly, "Well, at first he wasn't very willing, but that changed after I filled his alchemy workshop with gold coins. But speaking of which, among all the alchemists who've worked for me, you're asking for the least." When Isso said, "the least," the clerk's heart stopped for a moment, as if his self-esteem had taken a punch. The devastated clerk became dispirited, turned around without a word, and began working diligently. Soon, a brand new glider puppet appeared before Isso. As you can see, this glider is designed so distinctively maximum sarcasm level. Because it's single use, you need to get it repaired after each use. The clerk even guaranteed, "The quality of my repairs is unquestionable. It will never break, as long as you don't use it." Isso seemed to ignore him, quickly activated the mechanism. Suddenly a stone statue appeared beside him. Isso turned to look at the statue with determined eyes and gave a thumbs up. "You fixed it so quickly. I just wanted to test it. You're really great. But now I need you to fix it again. I'll pay the repair fee again." The clerk was about to explode, but hearing the last part, the flame of anger in his heart was instantly extinguished by gold coins. He crossed his arms arrogantly and said, "That'll cost extra." Isso heard this, and could only play along. All right. Being able to repair it in such a short time is indeed impressive. Naturally, my ancestors have been craftsmen. For generations, I've been playing with things like this as toys since I was little. I couldn't be more familiar with them. Isso thought this young man had real skills, and said, "Well, then make me a binding alchemical tool that can restrict people's movements." The clerk immediately began his sales pitch. "Speaking of binding, I strongly recommend the hexagram array. This is our shop's new flagship product. Even the city defense forces are using this alchemical array. Its binding power needs no explanation. It can even hold back giants from the north." Isso imagined it for a moment and said helplessly, "Only able to hold back giants that won't work. Then how about the chains of offer? This is a product of magic. It adjusts its strength according to the target's magical power. This is what the royal city uses to bind death row prisoners who have committed heinous crimes." Isso frowned and said, "Oh, I know about those. I've already broken countless of them. No problem. We still have Aladdin's bodysuit, Devil's Thorns, Azari's treasure." Isso shook his head at each one. The clerk said, with disgust, "Are you here to pick a fight? None of these work well. Can we have something simpler and more straightforward?" The clerk said, angrily, "If you want something simpler, then just go get some slime adhesive that would perfectly match your requirements." This gave Isso a flash of inspiration. Slime adhesive. The clerk explained, "Yeah, it's a device that can shoot out slime." "Oh wait, you don't mean to." Soon after, Isso drew a blueprint, and when the master clerk received it, he stood there frozen. Another clerk came over, and exclaimed in shock, "Is this a stick figure? How could we possibly make this?" The master clerk heard this and replied, "Yeah, but, he's just offering too much money. I don't want to give up." Scene change. Early morning, the city's adventurer guild was packed. Everyone looked at the notice board. 1 gold coin for just 1 slime. The next second, in perfect unison, they grabbed their weapons and charged towards the Great Plains outside the city. Die slimes. We've been wanting to get rid of you anyway. Time to eliminate these pests. Charge. Meanwhile at Kande's house, Nona hurriedly finished her breakfast, got up and walked towards the door, saying, "I'm going to the alchemy workshop. Don't save lunch for me." Kande and the butler could only helplessly watch. The butler then said, "The young lady has been getting closer to Lord Isso lately, but that's no surprise. Who wouldn't when Lord Isso is such a great hero?" Kanda frowned slightly and said, "Hero, huh, but what if the hero dies one day? Then he'll only live on in people's hearts. This can't go on. I'm sure Lord Isso doesn't have much money. If things really progress to that point of wandering around, that won't do. Butler, go get some money quickly." The butler immediately understood. "Yes, I'll go get money right away to hire an assassin to take care of Isso." As soon as he said this, Kanda and the butler looked at each other. The scene became extremely awkward. Then Kande angrily pounded the table and shouted, "The money is to make Isso leave my daughter. That guy even defeated the Goblin King. What good would hiring an assassin do?" Scene change. Isso brought a card of gold coins and shouted to everyone, "I've brought the money for everyone. Don't rush. Line up 1 barrel per person." At this time, Kande walked over, carrying 2 bags of gold coins. Seeing the room full of slimes, he thought he had come to the wrong place. Just then, another cart full of slimes arrived. As soon as it stopped, a crowd of people immediately surged forward, rushing to unload, saying all the slimes in the western suburbs have been exterminated. Looks like we need to import some from other places. Candy nearly dropped his jaw at this sight. Nona looked at her father and asked, "Why did you come and why are you carrying 2 bags of money?" Candy turned his head feeling wrong, and said, "Knowing you're in love, I especially came to bring you money. Nona, you must remember, although our family is a bit poor, we must have dignity." Nona thought back to these days at the alchemy workshop and felt she had maintained her dignity, being by Mr. Isso's side every day. But Mr. Isso always stayed by the clerk's side. But finally, today, she didn't have to go to the alchemy workshop. Now, how will the clerk compete with me for Mr. Isso? The chance for alone time has come. She excitedly pushed open the door, and was shocked to find Isso lying motionless in his chair. Hurriedly worried, she called out, "Are you all right? If you have anything on your mind, you can talk to me about it. I'm really worried about you." Isso wearily replied, "It's nothing. Just thinking about things." Before he could finish, a figure burst through the door, saying, "Mr. Isso, so the slime adhesive weapon is ready." It was the clerk. Isso seemed to come back to life, suddenly standing up and saying, "Great, I'll go right now." The clerk thoughtfully asked, "By the way, Miss Nona, aren't you coming? Something's wrong. Where did this killing intent come from?" Nona forced a smile and said, "Of course, I'm coming." At this time in the alchemy workshop, a grand introduction rang out. This unparalleled alchemical weapon has the power of lava-like ejection with a shooting range of tens of meters. Made from the super slime essence condensed from all the slimes in the western suburbs, with adhesion increased 100-fold. I shall name it, the Green Breath. This is all thanks to you giving us the chance to complete such a great alchemical work. As soon as he finished, the alchemist below immediately applauded in praise. The clerk watched from the side, unable to bear it, and complained, "Isn't this just a water gun on the platform?" Isso, looking at the weapon in his hand, slowly said, "This weapon is really amazing. This is exactly what I wanted," while thinking to himself, "Damn snail, this Sunday will be your death day." In the blink of an eye, it was Saturday. Roars echoed through the valley. Tomorrow is the Humans' Lantern Festival. At that time, the defense of the entire Halo City will be at its weakest. Then we'll show humans through action that we giants have returned. Instantly, the giant warriors below roared thunderously, but one giant looked around in confusion, saying puzzledly, "How strange. Where did all the slimes in this area go? I wanted to find a couple for a snack." Lantern Festival. What's that? Isso slowly stopped writing with his pen and asked. Nona excitedly explained, "That's the most distinctive festival in Halo City. Mr. Isso, you're so lucky to encounter the Lantern Festival on your first visit to Halo City." Isso closed his book inside. "Is that so? I never thought I could be associated with the word lucky. That's really rare. So when is this so-called Lantern Festival? Nona immediately answered. This Sunday on Lantern Festival Day. Halo City has a tradition of releasing lanterns. At that time, hundreds of lanterns will slowly rise and fly into the city. The sky full of lanterns will illuminate the entire Halo City. There's also a folk saying that if you make a wish to the lanterns that day, then by now, Isso already had a mental image the snail would come with her side, cutting her way through. Good evening, Isso. No matter where you run, I'll find you. I'll spend every Sunday with you. Nano was still fantasizing during the Lantern Festival. There will be many food stalls on the street where you can eat lots of delicacies that you can't get at other times. Once you miss it, it's hard to taste them again. Especially those love meatballs that only open during the Lantern Festival. Isso's mental image at this point: eat it while it's hot. You won't have another Lantern Festival. No, actually, you won't have it tomorrow. Isso and Nona thought about the Lantern Festival? No, can't think about it anymore. Something bad will happen. But just as Nona was about to speak shyly, the door was suddenly thrown open. Mr. Isso, are you here? The clerk saw Nona glaring at him with murderous intent, looking like she'd attack if he said another word. The sensible clerk immediately closed the door and shouted, "Oh, Mr. Isso isn't here? I'll run away." First seeing the clerk leave, Nona performed a quick face change. Then let's spend this happy Lantern Festival together. Time flew by quickly, and it was Sunday, the Lantern Festival. The streets were bustling with crowds. Among the sea of people, Isso could be heard shouting, "These meatballs are so delicious. They're amazing. Boss, give me another skewer." Nona sighed beside him. "You sure can eat, that's the 10th skewer already." The boss looked at this young man and couldn't help but say this customer actually managed to eat 10 skewers of beef balls in one go. "Since you like our meatballs so much, please accept this. This is only given to those who can finish 10 skewers in one sitting." Isso took it and carefully examined the meatball bracelet, then looked at Nona. At this moment, Nona's heart was racing like a little deer, thinking, is Mr. Isso going to give this bracelet to me? While Nona was still feeling touched, Isso gave a thumbs up and said, "See how amazing I am." Nona heard this and froze, then cried out in anguish, "Boss, I want to eat 10 skewers too. I want that bracelet too." But the boss awkwardly replied, "I'm really sorry, miss. My wife only made 2 of these bracelets, and before you came, the other bracelet was already taken by a girl." When Nona heard this, she was stunned. Taken by a girl? That means, in this city, there's a girl wearing the same bracelet as Mr. Isso. This made Nona heartbroken, and she burst into tears, sobbing to the boss, "Boss, quickly give me some beef skewers." Isso, completely misreading the situation, said, "They're really delicious, right?" Nona turned to look at the bracelet already on Isso's wrist, and shouted again, "I want to add a bottle of beer." "No, make it 2 bottles. A moment later, there was a hiccup, and Isso looked admiringly at the drunk Nona and asked, "Are you okay?" Hearing this, Nona turned around drunkenly and answered, "It's nothing, nothing at all. In a while, it'll be midnight, and there will be many beautiful fireworks here. I'm really looking forward to it." Just as she finished speaking, there was a whoosh in the sky. Beautiful fireworks bloomed in the air. The excited Nona sobered up immediately, pointing at the fireworks and shouting to Isso, look, it's starting." Isso looked at the brilliant flowers in the sky and sighed, "So beautiful. Come to think of it, since coming to this world, it's been a long time since I've been able to relax like this." Nona was also immersed in memories, saying, "Mr. Isso, I come to watch the fireworks every year, but because father is usually very busy, I'm always alone. But this year is different. This is also my first time spending the Lantern Festival with someone else. Mr. Isso, spending the Lantern Festival with you makes me very happy." Isso looked at Nona at this moment, thinking apologetically in his heart, "I'm sorry, Miss Nona, it's almost midnight. I have to leave." A figure flew in from the distance, creating a huge crater with a boom. The city guard shouted loudly, "It's the giant tribe. The giants have attacked the city." As made the people who were just immersed in joy instantly flee in panic. Nona looked around anxiously, panicking. She shouted, "Mr. Isso, let's run quickly." Nona stood frozen in place. Isso's figure had already disappeared. Just then, sounds came from the tower. It was midnight. Along with the sound of high heels click-clacking, the snail slowly appeared before Isso, who had been waiting for a long time. But when he looked up, he was surprised to discover the snail was also wearing a meatball bracelet on her hand. Isso looked at the bracelet he was wearing in disbelief, confirming it was indeed the same style. Recalling what the meatball shop owner had said, only 2 were made, and the other one was taken by a girl. He immediately looked at the snail in great shock. A girl? Huh? You count as a girl too? Tell me the truth. Did you steal this bracelet from some other girl? That's so mean. The snail ignored Isso completely, grabbed her scythe and swung it at him. Seeing this, Isso raised his green breath, and shot a massive blast at the snail, enveloping her within it. Meanwhile, in the panicking crowd, Nona was running breathlessly. But just then, Nona was knocked to the ground by a passerby running by. With a tearing sound, her skirt was also trampled, leaving a large hole. Her face pressed directly against the ground. She shakily got up. Tears involuntarily streamed down her face, and she thought with a sense of grievance, "You saved me from that terrifying prison. So why are you leaving me now? Is it because I'm not good enough for you? Men are all unreliable scoundrels," she said, as she tore off the ruined hem of her skirt. She then took off her high heels and slowly stood up. Something inside her seemed to change. Nona, and now you can only rely on yourself. I absolutely cannot die here. Isso, you better watch me. Isso was panting heavily, the slime container on his back now empty. He looked at the large mass in front of him and observed his surroundings for a while, wondering, did I succeed? It seems there's no air inside, and it's been so many minutes without any movement. That can only mean one thing. This damn snail is finally. Isso then laughed triumphantly at the sky. Finally, you snail. You finally fallen into my hands. Do you know how I've suffered these past days? You heartless creature. Every Sunday you come to kill me so punctually? Do you know how much pain I've endured? But what Isso didn't know was that the snail was unharmed, slowly emerging from the other side. Isso was still cursing loudly. You have no idea the value of my green breath. Now try to move. You can't, can you? You wanted to kill me. So come out already. I'm right here in front of you. What can you do to me? But just as Isso was gloating, the clicking sound of high heels approached from the side. It made Isso gasp in shock, and he turned to look. It was indeed the snail. He immediately turned and ran like a madman. Aaaah, hurling insults as he fled. Meanwhile, Nona was running when the person in front of her suddenly stopped, causing her to crash into them. People were horrified as they looked at the giant tribe members lying in front of them. The giant leader gave an order: take all the children back to eat. If the adults resist, leave no survivors. After saying this, the giant slowly approached the crowd up. Just then, the cry of a child caught the giant's attention. A woman tightly held her child, desperately shouting for help from all around. But all she received were cold, indifferent stares. However, at that moment, Nona stepped out from the crowd and shouted, "Stop, let them go." The giant dug out earwax that hadn't been cleaned in 100 years, thinking he had misheard, and said, "Do you want to hear what you're saying? What gives you the right?" Nona angrily roared, "Take whatever you want, but don't harm anyone." As soon as she finished speaking, the giant grabbed her and mocked, "But you are what we need, a beautiful girl like you. Do you know what fate awaits you in our hands? Let me give you a lesson so you can get used to it in advance." As he spoke, his other hand reached out and grabbed Nona's dress, the sound of fabric tearing echoing. But just as Nona was crying in despair, a cannonball struck the giant's head, saving Nona's purity. It turned out that Nona's father, Candy, and the clerk had arrived. Kanda looked at Nona, who was in tears, and comforted her. Don't cry. Don't cry." The mercenaries all ran away when they heard the giants were attacking the city. "I finally found you." The clerk, frowning, added, "Miss, pull yourself together. The city lord has abandoned the city with his soldiers. We can only rely on ourselves now." Just then an angry roar came from nearby. "You damn humans. None of you will survive tonight." Enda swiftly raised his sword and stood in front of Nona, his eyes radiating confidence, as he said, "Even if I have to sacrifice this old bone of mine today, you won't lay a finger on my daughter." The next second, Candy was grabbed by the giant, who said, "All right, then I'll dismantle this old bone of yours right now." Candy, who could change his expression faster than flipping a book, immediately pleaded, "Brother, have mercy. The atmosphere just got to me, and I had to say something to save face." Nona, seeing her father being held, picked up a sword from the ground and shouted at the giant, "Let go of my father. I'll cut you down, you bastard." Akande, panicking, yelled, "Nona, are you crazy? Don't worry about me. Run away with the clerk." This stunned the giant, who said, "You think you're a hero? Fine, let's play with you. Then aid the clerk." holding a small cannon, said, "Miss, I'll support you." Hearing this, Nona gritted her teeth and charged at the giant, shouting, "Die, ye!" Nona, holding her sword high, rushed forward, but with a thud, she fell to the ground because she had raised her sword too high. Losing her balance, the giant couldn't help but laugh. He then picked up the sword from the ground and handed it back to her, saying, "Here, I'll give you another chance. Don't worry, I'll definitely take you back with me. You're too much fun." The clerk couldn't bear to watch any longer and fired a cannon shot, gritting his teeth as he said, "Don't forget about me." But the cannon's power didn't seem to be very strong, as it didn't cause any damage. Instead, the giant swatted it away, sending it spinning 720 degrees in the air before crashing into a wall and falling to the ground. The giant, losing patience, looked at the surrounding humans and said, "What a useless waste. I'm tired of playing brothers, finish them off." Then a spark of inspiration hit him, and he said, "I've got a fun idea. Let's see who can kill the most. How about that?" This immediately excited the other giants, who all nodded and said, "Great idea. Let's start right away." Suddenly, the sound of rapid footsteps approached from the distance, accompanied by a heart-wrenching scream. "Bastard, get out of my way. Yes, I'm talking to you. A move. Can't you hear me?" As he spoke, he threw his green breath to the side. Nona, hearing the familiar voice, quickly followed. "That's Mr. Isso." The giant was still laughing loudly. "This is hilarious. Did this human get lost while running away?" But in the blink of an eye, the giants' bodies were instantly split in two. Nona quickly hugged Isso, tears streaming down her face as she said, "Mr. Isso, I knew you would come to save us." The surrounding people also realized what had happened and gathered around Isso, exclaiming, "It's Mr. Isso. He killed the giants. He's so strong. He took them all out in one move. He's truly a hero." Isso, however, was panicking inside, surrounded by the crowd with no way to escape. He thought, "This time, I'm really done for." It turned out that just as he was about to be caught by the snail, Isso had run to the base of a city wall. Isso thought to himself, "Heaven helps me." Then his boots suddenly grew wings, and he leapt onto the city wall. "Now, the snail can't follow me up here," he thought. But as soon as Isso got onto the wall, he looked down and froze. "I forgot the snail can climb walls." And so Isso continued his escape back to the present. Isso was surrounded by the crowd, with people expressing their gratitude, admiration and respect. "Mr. Isso, I knew you'd come back to save us. Young man, you're so strong. No wonder you could eat 10 meatballs from my shop." Isso, feeling utterly helpless, shouted in despair, "What are you talking about? Run. Otherwise we'll all die together." He then glanced to the side, and saw the snail slowly approaching from a distance. "It's over this time. I'm really done for," he thought. The snail, looking at the meatball shop owner, who was hugging Isso in the crowd, trembled slightly as it held its sickle, after some internal struggle. Yet her mind was full of meatballs, and she slowly put down the sickle in her hand. "Delicious. No, I'll deal with him next time." By the time Isso looked again, the snail had disappeared. He breathed a sigh of relief, thinking in disbelief, "It's gone. Why, I've cheated death again." What luck! The one emitting the terrifying dragon-like roar was the snail that had been relentlessly pursuing Isso, or rather hunting him down. Isso suddenly sat up, realizing it was all a dream. "Thank goodness I woke up," he thought. Just then, Nona leaned in and burst into tears full of guilt as she cried, "Mr. Isso, you're finally awake. Please forgive me. I shouldn't have doubted that you'd run away." Isso, completely caught off guard, aliced as Nona recounted the whole story. Nona babbled on while Isso responded with absent-minded ahos. He clutched his head in frustration, thinking, "So the snail killed those giants, and everyone thinks it was me. Once again, I've benefited from the snail's actions. How annoying, another failure." Then he remembered, wait, the snail was wearing that meatball bracelet. He immediately got up and headed out. Nona, confused, asked, "Where are you going?" Isso, walking away, said, "There's something I need to confirm, it's really important." You've been taking care of me for a while, so just stay home and rest." Nona, hearing this, was stunned. "Oh, he must be concerned about me. He definitely is. Yes." She then lay down on the bed that still carried Isso's scent and rolled around. Concern means acceptance, and acceptance means marriage. "Mr. Isso, you're so bold. Let's name our child Ibu." But then she thought, as Mr. Isso's future wife, keeping track of his whereabouts is definitely not stalking behavior. Meanwhile, Isso arrived at the meatball shop. The owner respectfully said, "Mr. Isso, you mean the daughter who took the other meatball necklace? She's here today, and she arrived just half an hour ago." Isso was surprised. Half an hour ago. So that guy isn't like those NPCs. He's who reset every Sunday and appear by my side. That means he's a real person living in this world. In that case, if I can just run far enough away, I'll be fine, right? But then again, there are no planes or high-speed trains in this world. How am I supposed to run away? At this time, the meatball shop owner said, while taking something out of his pocket, "She really loves our meatballs. And today I noticed her bracelet was dirty, so I replaced it with a new one. Here's the old one. It has Vera engraved on it, so that must be the lady's name." Suddenly, Nona appeared and said to the owner, "Give me the latest version of the meatball." Then, as if she had just happened to run into Isso, she said, "Oh Mr. Isso, what a coincidence to meet you here. This must be fate arranged by the heavens." But Isso didn't even glance at Nona, thinking, "And even if I were to run away, where could I go? Where would be hard to reach?" Nona, eating by herself, thought, "Then I'll keep you company in your loneliness. After all, you're my savior." But don't get the wrong idea. As she ate, she suddenly felt dizzy, her face turning red. Nona looked like she was about to breathe fire. "This is so spicy." The shop owner, watching with amusement, laughed. "Customer, this is the latest wasabi flavor." Isso, feeling a headache coming on, thought, "And how does she keep tracking me? This is so annoying." But just then a clanging sound came from the distance. Isso looked over and saw two alchemists carrying a giant's armor. There was a faint slash mark on it, but it hadn't penetrated. Isso quickly went over to inspect it. The two alchemists, seeing Isso approach, greeted him respectfully. "Thanks to you, Mr. Isso, or else we would have all been doomed." Isso, touching the scar on the armor, asked, with a sharp gaze, "What is this thing made of?" The scene shifted to the alchemy workshop. The elder alchemist, with his vast knowledge, immediately recognized it. "This is Northland cold iron. The giant wearing it must have been at least a minor leader. It's said to grow on 1,000-year-old Shelly Mountains, and is one of the hardest substances in the world." This statement immediately drew praise from the other young alchemists. Isso, stroking the Northland cold iron, shed a tear of regret for not having met it sooner. Nona, watching quietly, raised an eyebrow and thought that, "Look, it's unmistakable. It's a deep affection for a lump of iron." Meanwhile, Isso was thinking, "I could trap the snail in a cage, or hand it over to the giants, or freeze it on a Shelly mountain." The more Isso thought about it, the more excited he became. At the alchemy workshop, Isso was surrounded by a group of alchemists with a large lump of iron placed in front of him. Isso patted it and said to the alchemists, "Name your price. I'm very interested in this thing." This made the alchemists look at each other and shake their heads in silence. Then one alchemist stepped forward and reluctantly replied, "Mr. Isso, it's not that we can't do it, but the process of crafting cold iron is quite special. It's one of the hardest substances in the world, and we don't have the means to work with it here. Moreover, this is a treasure of the giants, so they definitely wouldn't sell it." This left Isso in silence. He then hugged the lump of iron and started crying, pounding on it as he shouted, "If I could use this to make a suit of armor, I'd be invincible." Hearing this, the alchemist added, "Actually, cold iron isn't invincible. It has a fatal flaw. It's extremely heavy and difficult to transport." This immediately sparked an idea in Isso. Looking at the large lump of iron in the corner, he envisioned a plan. "This is it. I'm going to the Northland. You'll come with me to forge a cold iron cage there, no matter the cost." As soon as he finished speaking, the alchemists immediately replied, without hesitation, "No, no, no. The giants would pound us into meat paste, wrap us in bread and eat us. Please reconsider, Mr. Isso." Suddenly, Nona, who had been standing by, realized something. "Since these people are so resistant, if I step forward now, I'll be the one who stands out." Her mind was filled with such thoughts, and love seemed to consume her entire being. "Nona, only you can accompany me for life. Let's get married. We'll name our child Ibu, as you suggested. The rest you can imagine." Meanwhile, Isso was discussing with the alchemists. The alchemist, seeing Isso's determination to go to the Northland, tried to persuade him the giants' attitude towards humans is nothing but enslavement and hatred. Moreover, the giants living in the Northland are different from those low-level giants we've encountered before. They're much more ferocious in battle. Isso, in his mind, thought, "If they're all wearing cold iron armor, that would kill two birds with one stone." Perfect. The alchemist continued, Besides, the Northland is far from Halo City. The journey will be fraught with dangers. Without a substantial logistical support, we'd freeze to death in 3 minutes. In Isso's mind, he thought, what do you know? It's settled. That's 3 birds with 1 stone. His eyes sparkled with excitement as he said, I'm definitely going there. Who's coming with me? In the next second, the alchemist all teleported backward, leaving only the shop assistant standing alone. The assistant's name was Odyssey. Isso rushed forward and grabbed Odyssey's hand. Filled with excitement and gratitude, I knew you were the same as me. My dear friend, from now on, we're in this together. Odyssey immediately turned to his master in panic and said, no, I can't, I've signed an apprentice contract. I can't leave the workshop. He looked over to see his master pressing his fingerprint onto a transfer contract surrounded by piles of gold coins. Once it was done, the master handed it to Isso. Now he's yours. It was like in the marketplace. Here you go. All right, your vegetables are the freshest. Isso dragged Odyssey toward the door. Odyssey, crying and begging, clung to the threshold, unwilling to let go. Nona, with tender affection, said, Mr. Isso, I'll go home and discuss it with my father. I'll be back soon. Isso, expressionless, coldly, replied, don't force yourself. He then crouched down and tried to persuade Odyssey. You have no choice now. Don't worry, I'll pay you a monthly salary. But Odyssey, still stubborn, said, I'm not that kind of person. Don't think you can buy me with money. I'm not going to die for nothing. Isso gave a thumbs up and directly said, 1,000 gold coins a month. Odyssey immediately stood up and said, you read me well. Isso and Odyssey arrived at the merchant guild. The place was filled with the stench of greedy merchants. As soon as they entered, they saw a merchant scolding his subordinate. You're useless. The profit margin on textiles has to be at least 30% to make any money. How many times do I have to tell you? Suddenly, the merchant noticed someone approaching and turned to look. His attitude immediately did a 360-degree turn. Oh, isn't this the hero who saved the people from disaster? I'm the branch manager of the Halo City Merchant Guild. Mr. Isso, what brings you here today? But in his mind, he was scheming. Rumor has it that this guy is loaded. If I can please him, I'll make a fortune in the future. Isso, however, casually said, I need to reach the Northland by this Sunday. The manager, upon hearing Northland, immediately became serious. He replied, it's an honor that you trust our guild, but you can't make such an impossible request. Isso directly threw a list in front of the manager. If you can prepare everything on this list for me, it's possible. The manager, with his years of business experience, had a bad feeling. He slowly opened the list, and his eyes widened in disbelief. He pointed at the list and stammered, 20 unicorns. Isso nonchalantly said, therefore pulling the carriages. The manager, dumbfounded, thought, is this guy messing with me? He then explained, Mr. Isso, you should know that unicorns are extremely rare. Even the royal family only has 3, and they're used as sacred beasts in ceremonies. Moreover, ordinary people can't command them. Isso, stubborn, interrupted, it's fine, I have money. The manager replied, it's not about the money. Let me put it this way, our merchant guild has a strict VIP ranking system. Currently you don't qualify. Isso interrupted again, indifferently, pulling out a red string. I know red string membership, right? I have it. The manager, seeing only 1 red string, almost laughed. Just 1. I thought you'd have at least 2. Rumors really can't be trusted. He immediately became dismissive and said, perhaps you don't fully understand. According to the guild's rules, the more gold you store, the higher your rank. No offense, but Mr. Isso, we do have some new donkey and horses here, though. But what the manager didn't expect was that Isso didn't care about the red string membership at all, and had almost forgotten about it. Only then did he suddenly remember and say, oh, I have quite a few red strings, but there were so many that I made them into a sweater. As if struck by an irresistible force, the manager immediately knelt on one knee, pounded his chest and offered his heart. Mr. Isso's difficulties are my difficulties. Mr. Isso's demands are my direction. I'm willing to go through fire and water. For Mr. Isso, in the merchant guild, the red string was a symbol of status. 1 red string represented a local wealthy person. 3 red strings represented a city guardian, and 10 red strings represented the wealthiest in the royal city. This was common knowledge among all guild members. But this knowledge was shattered today because the person before them was wearing a sweater made of red strings. Could there really be someone in this world who owned a sweater made of red strings? What kind of status would that be? The manager was at a loss for words to express his feelings. He immediately put on a fawning expression and said, "Sir, the orders have been sent out. Is there anything else you need?" Iso, leisurely putting on his coat to cover the somewhat rustic but incredibly powerful red sweater, asked, "We'll depart early Wednesday morning. Is that okay?" The manager, rubbing his stiff face, looked confused and swallowed hard before reluctantly replying, "Early Wednesday morning. That's only a day and a half. No matter how you look at it, it's still a bit." Seeing Iso's brow slightly furrow and his eyes glare at him, showing a hint of displeasure, the manager immediately changed his tune, sweat dripping down his face. "No matter how you look at it, it's still very doable. Rest assured, you'll have everything you need by then." He then added, somewhat awkwardly, "There's one more thing. The Shelly elf who will serve as your guide is a very special individual. That person's status and position are probably..." Iso, seeing the manager's concern, casually said, "Don't worry, I know her. She'll come." In a palace, the midday sun shone through the glass onto Shelly's silver, white short hair as she intently studied the documents handed to her by her subordinates. This scene was witnessed by her assistant who had just entered. Her graceful figure, elegant demeanor, flawless skin and impeccable features made the assistant sigh. "Elegant, truly elegant. Is there anyone more perfect than our lord in this world?" Just a few months ago, Loxi City was plagued by lizardmen from the southern swamps. The useless city lord, who only knew how to exploit the people, didn't even put up a fight and fled with his guards, disappearing without a trace. This plunged the entire city into despair, but Shelly, an orphan, stepped forward to repay the city for raising her. She alone negotiated with the lizardmen. No one thought she would succeed, and everyone believed she had met a tragic end. But she returned in a flash, shocking everyone. The lizard men that had troubled Loxi City vanished overnight, and even the entire swamp was dug up. Although Lady Shelly has always said that there is someone else, no one believes her words. After all, who can save Loxi City without a reason? Moreover, upon her return, Shelly had a red string tied to her wrist, which connected her to the Merchant Guild, allowing her to obtain a large sum of money and resources to rebuild Loxi City. This only further convinced people that Shelly was the one who had done it, and she naturally became the new city lord. The assistant, snapping out of her thoughts, handed Shelly a cup of black tea. Placing it gently by her side, Shelly took it, blew on it, and slowly said, "Is it really okay for me to be the city lord? Even now I feel like I'm living in a dream." The assistant immediately replied, "Of course, it is. You always say that it was all done by some unseen passerby, but we all know you're just being humble. How could there be such a good man in this world?" Just as she finished speaking, Iso in Halo City sneezed. Shelly, slightly dazed, turned to look out the window. She recalled that unforgettable experience from her past. He, little girl, you've come alone to die. We'll roast and eat you in a moment." Just then, she heard a frantic voice shouting, "I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die." Behind the man was a girl holding a sickle, taking a large step forward. But because the swamp was too slippery, the girl lost her balance and fell her sickle, slamming into the ground. In an instant, the swamp churned violently, like a volcano erupting, sending the lizardmen flying into the sky. The man appeared before Shelly, holding a red string, exhausted as he said, "Take me out of here. This is for you." Shelly, not knowing what else to do, obediently followed. Returning to the present, the assistant read the letter in her hand and said, "This is outrageous. A wealthy man wants to enter the Shelly Mountains and needs a guide, so they want you to take on the role. They also demand that you gather in a place called Halo City by tomorrow. This Iso guy is just a rich man. How arrogant." Shelly, hearing this, was slightly stunned. Unlike her assistant, she remained calm and asked, "What did you just say? What's the name of the wealthy man?" The assistant looked at the letter again and said, "It's a guy named Iso. He wants you to be his guide." She nodded slightly, then stood up and said to her assistant, "Prepare the carriage now." This directly stunned the assistant, who stood still and asked, "Where does Shelly?" Firmly replied, "To be his guide, of course." Back in Halo City, Candy had been restless for the past 2 days. On Monday afternoon, when his only daughter told him she wanted to go to the Northlands, he was shocked and angry, immediately refusing. Nona, however, was unhappy and asked why. Candy, already aware of his daughter's feelings, said, "It's definitely because that Iso guy is going to the Northlands and you want to follow him." "My love struck "Daughter, why are you so obsessed with such a dangerous place?" No father would want to see his daughter in danger. But Nona became even more unreasonable, shouting, "I've always wanted to travel the world. It'll be a great experience. Please. And how could it be dangerous? There'll be many people going with us." Kande, hearing this, thought, this guy might be rich, but he has no power. There's no way he could gather a group of people willing to go to their deaths with him, let alone a large one. That's just a fantasy. So Kande's mood immediately improved, and he patted Nona's head as he said, "All right, if that guy can gather the most elite expedition team in the country, I'll let you go to the Northlands." Nona was instantly overjoyed, her eyes shining. Suddenly, the butler burst into the room in a panic and shouted, "Master, you need to come out and see this. The streets are in chaos." On the main street of Halo City, a group of unicorns was pulling carriages forward. A crowd of people had gathered around. Among them, Candy looked at the scene in disbelief. This is too much. A luxurious carriage approached from behind the procession. Nana saw Isso standing nearby, and was about to greet him, when the carriage door gently opened and Isso stepped forward, saying thank you for accepting the commission. Inside the luxurious carriage, Shelly looked at Isso with excitement, while her assistant glared at him with disdain. After not seeing each other for so long, Shelly couldn't contain her emotions, and quickly upped out of the carriage, saying, "Long time, no see Mr. Isso." But because she was wearing high heels, she lost her balance, and slipped, falling into Isso's arms in a sweet embrace. This scene directly petrified Nona in the distance. Overwhelmed by the shock, she fainted. In her dream, Isso whispered in her ear, "Nona, do you know who the cutest girl in the world is? Who? It's not me, is it? Oh no, of course. It's the fair-skinned, beautiful, long-eared elf, Shelly. She's the woman I love the most." Instantly, screams erupted. No, this can't be true. I was here first. You have to wait in line. I object to this marriage." Nona suddenly woke up and found many people surrounding her. Kande, standing nearby, anxiously said, "You're finally awake. My daughter, why did you suddenly faint?" Nona, still dazed, sighed in relief. "It was just a dream. I couldn't handle the shock and fainted. Thank goodness it was just a dream. There's still a chance." She then looked at Shelly, who was standing not far away. In an instant, Nona seemed to use a secret technique of spatial displacement, appearing in front of Shelly and extending her hand to gather intelligence. "Hello, I'm Nona. I'm Mr. Isso's best friend." Shelly also extended her hand and politely replied, "Hello, I'm Shelly, the city lord of Loxy City." Nona thought, what is this? Such a dazzling aura. How can there be such a woman in this world, so beautiful, and a city lord too? Just as she was about to say, "Sorry to bother you," someone tapped her on the shoulder. It was the person she had been longing for. "Isso. She'll be our guide to the Northlands. I'll be relying on her from now on. By the way, why did you faint earlier? Were you too excited?" Anona's mind began to wander again. Since she's a city lord, how can she just leave her people and work behind to wander around with her beauty and status? Mr. Isso probably won't be able to resist her before we even reach the Northlands. This won't do. I have to confess my feelings. So gathering all her courage, Nona shouted, "Mr. Isso, I have something very important to tell you. It's the most significant decision of my life, and I've been thinking about it for a long time." At this moment, Nona, who had been holding back for so long, couldn't contain herself any longer. "Move. Nona, now is not the time to be shy. Say it. It's a battle with that woman." She continued, "I actually want to go to the Northlands with you." In that instant, the air froze. What Nona had in mind and what she said were completely different. After a moment of eye contact, Isso gave a thumbs up and said, "Nice. We'll depart early tomorrow morning." On Wednesday at noon, the convoy set off on time at the gates of Halo City. The people seeing them off paid their highest respects, as everyone understood the difficulties and significance of this journey. If successful, it would be an unprecedented feat. And so Isso left Halo City, embarking on the long journey to the Northlands amidst the people's reluctance. Someone even composed a poem to commemorate the occasion. Over the past 100 years, many have attempted to enter the Northlands, but a team of this scale was unprecedented, so Isso was quite confident, not worrying about any mishaps in the snowy mountains. The only thing he was concerned about was whether that damn snail would still follow him. But then he thought, there's no way it could still be following me after all this. And so he immersed himself in joy, discussing the route with Shelly. But not everyone in the team was as happy as he was, such as Nona. The coldness on her face made anyone who looked at her feel a chill. She stared intently at Shelly, watching the two of them being so intimate. But then she thought again, curling up in a ball of self-pity. But she's so beautiful and mature and a city lord too. She's hundreds of times better than a rich kid like me. Odyssey, sitting beside her, fell silent, not knowing how to comfort her. Just then, Nona took the initiative to ask him, "But I'm definitely better, right?" Odyssey was stunned for a moment, then quickly responded, "I completely agree with you." A white lie told out of necessity for survival. Hearing Odyssey's agreement, Nona immediately became excited. She began her fantasizing again. First, I have more time to stay by Lord Isso's side. Being a city lord doesn't allow for such leisure. Secondly, I've noticed that Isso is more interested in Lawless, and my age is just perfect. Plus, I appear the most frequently, so at least I can still be familiar to everyone. After saying this, she felt completely confident. Meanwhile, Odyssey, now outside the carriage, let out a deep sigh. How troublesome getting dragged out to the north, and now dealing with this drama. Just as Odyssey was resting his chin on his hand, contemplating life, one of the carriage doors opened, and Isso slowly walked out. Immediately, spotting him, he rushed over, putting his arm around Odyssey's shoulder, saying, "Hey, good buddy, we're about to enter the cold current buffer zone. We've decided to go to a giant tribe territory called Good. Unfortunately, since this expedition was organized in such a hurry, we haven't assigned a chief administrator position yet. So who should take that role?" After fake coughing a few times, Odyssey couldn't help but mock such poor acting. "Really isn't necessary." Then he began to say, "Well, actually." Before Odyssey could finish, a hand firmly gripped him. Isso exclaimed with excitement, "Actually, you really want to do it right then? The task of notifying everyone about travel arrangements is yours, my dear friend." In the end, Odyssey compromised, accepting the position with conditions of 5-year contract reduction and doubled salary. Isso added one more condition. They must count the number of people every day, making sure no extra person appears. Odyssey walked away complaining, "What extra person could there be? We'd be lucky not to lose people who would want to go to that wasteland." In the blink of an eye, night had fallen. At this time in the food carriage, there were rustling sounds. A light gradually illuminated in the corner. Snail, following the scent, walked step by step with a lamp toward the place piled with meat, occasionally making swallowing sounds. The temptation of food was simply irresistible. Meanwhile, at the Goo giant tribe, a red-haired giant excitedly said that Guy was absolutely insane. Eyes shooting electricity, mouth breathing fire. "I'm not a deserter. I struggled desperately to run back to report to you." The seemingly intelligent giant chief immediately replied, "You managed to survive from those demon gods' hands. Truly a warrior. The Good tribe welcomes you." And so he successfully became a security guard. On the night when giants invaded the Halo City, while the giants were looting everywhere, a figure flashed by and the giants' bodies were torn apart, blood and flesh flying around the corner. The red-haired giant, who survived by being at the rear, witnessed everything. Just not far away, people rushed forward and squeezed a person, and naturally thought that he did it. It's a demon run. At noon on Saturday, after 3 very smooth days of travel. Now, the red-haired giant was on the Good tribe's wall talking to himself. "What a bunch of fools, so easily deceived by made-up stories. But I sure was lucky. I never want to see that kind of being again in my life." Just then, he looked in shock at the distant, snow-covered landscape where a long line of carriages was slowly approaching. In disbelief, he said, "How could a human caravan venture into the north? Let me look closer." Looking over, an elegant carriage opened a small window. Zooming in further, a head poked out. Though it was just a glimpse back then, he would never forget that face for the rest of his life. There was no mistake, it was him. It was definitely him. The demon had come to kill me. That night's terror instantly returned, making him cry out while rushing away. "The demon is here, quick, notify the chief." On Isso's side, having a good guide proved incredibly important. The caravan maintained the correct direction without getting lost, and all the concerns they had before departure were resolved under Isso's powerful financial assault, to the point where everyone who had consciously embarked on this journey felt things were going almost unnaturally smoothly. The caravan was now approaching. The good giant tribe Iso withdrew from the window saying, "We're almost there. Just hold on a bit longer. We'll reach our destination soon." Beside him, Odyssey, wrapped in a thick blanket, shouted, "Close the window. Already, it's freezing in here. Besides, this isn't anything good. Dealing with those guys requires extreme caution, or you'll lose your life in an instant if you're not careful." Iso replied with a carefree expression, "Don't worry, nothing will go wrong." Shortly after, the caravan slowly entered the tribe. No, more accurately, it crashed into the tribe. Iso scratched his head embarrassedly. "I'm really sorry. The unicorn seems to be a bit agitated due to the cold, which might have caused it to damage your wall." In this tense atmosphere, the giant chief reluctantly asked humans, "What are you doing here?" Iso, still showing no signs of nervousness, walked forward while reaching into his waist pack, saying, "Don't be nervous, my friends. You see, I'm here to make a trade with you." These giants had never seen such a brave human. Usually, humans would tremble in fear at the sight of them, but this person's demeanor was so calm, it was as if he didn't consider them a threat at all. Seeing Iso reaching for something and remembering the red-haired giant story, they became increasingly convinced it was true. The chief and several giants unconsciously stepped back, their faces filled with terror, raising their weapons and shouting, "Don't come any closer. Stay right there. What are you taking out?" While Iso remained remarkably calm. After all, he'd spent the past half-year being hunted by that snail countless times. Hovering on the edge of death, ordinary dangers no longer frightened him. He was still surprised by the giant's extreme reaction. He had only come to make a trade, and while pondering this, he took another step forward. The panicked giants immediately shouted again, "Damn human. We said, don't move. What are you holding? Hand it over." Iso could only helplessly take out what was in his bag. "It's apples. You've got nothing but snow and rocks here, so you must need lots of food. That's why I brought plenty of food and daily necessities. All I want in exchange is a bit of cold iron." Cold iron growing on the freezing mountaintops was considered a supreme treasure by the giants. As Iso spoke, the chief's expression grew increasingly grim. Just then the red-haired giant shouted loudly, "This is insane. You little punk, dare to covet our tribe's supreme treasure. Even if you're a demon god, we won't agree. Cold iron is a gift from heaven to the giant tribe. How could we trade it?" Iso sighed helplessly, brushing snow off himself. "Don't be so rigid, relax. My offer is very generous. I'm not trying to take advantage of you." Seeing words alone couldn't clarify the situation, he snapped his fingers, and two heavily laden carriages appeared in everyone's view. Iso walked forward, grabbing the door handle, and said to the giants, "I brought lots of money too. It's all in here. Take a look." With that, he slowly opened the door. The giants saw several flashes of golden light like a surging sea instantly overshadowing the white radiance unique to the snowy mountains, blindingly bright in the sun's reflection. The gates of the Good tribe opened wide. Two giants laid out a red carpet with a large table in the center piled high with tempting food and delicious wine. Amidst the clear sound of clinking glasses, the giant chief made a grand declaration. "I hereby announce that from today forward, giants and humans share life and death. Face challenges together. Cheers." The giants below all cheered, celebrating this historic moment. However, the red-haired giant wasn't present. Once the thought of escape arose, it couldn't be suppressed. He looked around, and after making sure no one was watching him, he secretly snuck away. Using the giant's excellent sense of smell, he easily found the location of the human's food carriage. But when the red-haired giant opened the carriage door, he froze in place. There was already someone inside, a human woman in black clothes with a black hood, sitting in the carriage, currently gnawing on a piece of meat. She and the red-haired giant found themselves staring at each other. The woman clearly had no combat ability. "I can sell you to slave traders and get some travel money. Don't blame me for being cruel." Snail's eyes suddenly turned sharp. In the next moment, the red-haired giant felt the world spinning and his body was torn apart. Outside, the snow was falling heavily. On the mountain top, Iso and Odyssey were watching the giants moving about below. Odyssey asked, "You came all this way just to watch these giants build a big iron cage?" Iso replied dismissively, "You still don't understand me well enough. I'm running from death's footsteps. Death is like the wind, always by my side." Odyssey turned and walked away with a look of disgust, snorting, "I knew you weren't quite right in the head, since that slime spear incident. Meanwhile, Nona watched this scene from afar, muttering to herself, "What's going on here? Why are two men always hanging out together? Why are they hugging again? Why won't they hug me?" Just then, Shelley's voice came with a gentle inquiry, "Miss Nona, what are you doing?" Turning around, Nona saw this elegant and beautiful woman and nervously replied, "Just looking at the scenery." But Shelley sat down beside her. Nona, feeling uncomfortable, continued asking, "You're a city lord. After all, what made you leave your work and come to a place like this?" With eyes sparkling like jewels deep and enchanting, Shelley answered, "Seriously, actually, it's because my fate has been intertwined with his from the beginning. I owe him now, and whenever he needs me, I will be by his side no matter when or where." Nona's mouth twitched slightly, her body seeming to form a protective barrier, showing such rejection towards the woman beside her. She turned to look out the window, seeing change. Everyone was now gathered, and the carriage leader nervously looked at Isso and Odyssey, saying, "While checking the supplies, we found half a body stuck in the snow, and we discovered we're missing a whole month's worth of food." Hearing this, Isso could only think of one person. What a nuisance. Not only hitching a ride on my carriage and trying to kill me every day, but now even stealing food. The giant chief roared, "What exactly did you do to him?" Just as Isso didn't know how to answer, Odyssey stepped forward and shouted, righteously, "Wait, shouldn't we be the ones asking that? Why was a giant near our food carriage? And we're missing so much food. Only you giants could eat that much. Besides, these kinds of wounds couldn't have been caused by us humans. It must have been some kind of giant beast. You're accusing us without any evidence or proof. Are you trying to destroy the relationship we've just built?" The fierce counter-attack left the giants speechless. They dispersed as if nothing had happened. This made Isso look at Odyssey with admiration. Amazing. While Odyssey, who had been skilled in alchemy since childhood, naturally had a sharper mind than ordinary people, remembering Isso's earlier warning about watching out for extra people. So he pointed at Isso and demanded, loudly, "You must know that whatever killed that giant wasn't some wild beast." Just as Isso was about to reveal the truth, Odyssey's brilliant mind began racing with theories. Could it be that ancient legend is true? On long ago, there was a demon god who, dissatisfied with the tributes from humans, decided to destroy an entire village. Then a brave warrior stepped forward and offered to bear everyone's curse, letting the demon hunt him alone. From then on, this warrior carried a curse that could never be lifted forever, running from pursuit. Sadly, he passed away not long after. Odyssey's voice changed as he spoke, and even his gaze toward Isso was no longer filled with disdain, but with admiration. "So you also bear such a curse?" Isso struggled internally, wondering whether to tell him the truth. Seeing Isso's calm demeanor, Odyssey thought as expected of a strong person to maintain such composure under such hardship. He then put one hand on his chest and pointed at Isso with the other. Speaking as a true friend, "I understand you. Don't worry, I won't let you die." Isso's mouth twitched, about to speak, but not knowing what to say. What should I do now? After all, the atmosphere should be heated up now. Meanwhile, under the snow, in just a day and a half, all work was completed, building a cage made of cold iron. At this time, the giant chief looked at this enormous structure, his brow furrowing as he pondered a question. What was this for? And how would they transport something so heavy and large? A giant beside him scratched his head and said, naively, he mentioned it would be useful today. Something about the time for the final battle having come. The chief's eyes immediately widened upon hearing this. Something's not right. This iron cage is obviously prepared for us. These damn humans must be here for revenge. It was all a trap. Meanwhile, Nona found Isso alone and asked with a smile, "Why are you here by yourself?" Though, beneath her smile, she thought, "Why hasn't he come to find me for so long?" But Isso maintained a gloomy expression, slowly speaking, "There's this woman who's been troubling me for a long time. She follows me like a ghost, always clinging to me. I really don't know what to do." Nona burst into tears. "Lord Isso must hate me." But then Isso continued, "That person, you've met her before, remember?" At that moment, Nona's despair was instantly filled with joy. Dancing around happily, "You scared me. I thought too much." Not far from them, Snail had already raised her scythe, ready to rush forward and cut off Isso's head at any moment. Just then, a powerful voice came from behind her. "Little human girl, why are you alone here? Come inside with us. We're having a feast tonight." Hearing about the feast, Vera took the giant's hand and turned away. Meanwhile, Odyssey was holding a small notebook drawing something. "If you could tell me what that monster looks like, I could devise countermeasures." Isso looked at Odyssey, still somewhat uncomfortable, and pondered before saying it's a humanoid creature wearing a black cloak, usually carrying an exaggerated side. Soon after, they received an invitation from the giant chief to attend a banquet on the surface. The atmosphere at the feast was excellent, as if the 1,000-year hatred between giants and humans had dissipated during these 2 days of interaction. But behind the scenes, the chief instructed his subordinates later secretly add sedatives to their wine to knock them out. We must strike first. And remember, this matter absolutely cannot leak out. Don't drink too much tonight, and don't let this leak to the humans. The chief said, we'll start the battle tonight. Don't let the humans know. That's right. Our chief put sedatives in the humans' wine. Hidden in a corner, Nona heard everything from beginning to end, thinking to herself, Lord Isso, this time, it's Nona's turn to protect you. Meanwhile, as both sides sat down, appearing ready to drink and feast together, the giant chief spoke first. Mr. Isso, why aren't you drinking? This is our giant's most special slime wine. Thinking to himself, drink it. Why won't you drink? Damn, I even sacrificed such delicious slime wine to tempt him. Isso was thinking, if I weren't counting on you to help block some damage. Come on, Snail, hurry up. The next moment, the giant chief thought he had been exposed, when Isso suddenly slammed his wine cup on the table and declared, of course, I'll drink this wine. But not just yet. After all, this is a historic moment. Let me say a few words. He thought for a moment about what to say. Well, let me say this. We've come to this wonderful place called good. It's very good. This cooperation is very good. Regarding this, I have 3 points to look forward to. First, he started his top-notch nonsense literature about historic moments, personal experiences, and working together towards a better tomorrow. For the simple-minded, physically strong giants, this was completely incomprehensible. Just when they were about to break down, Isso finished his speech and announced they could begin the feast. Instantly, the giants were moved to tears, all cheering and applauding with all their might. At this point, the giant chief raised his wine cup and offered it after speaking for so long. Have some wine to wet your throat. Isso looked at the sticky liquid in the wine cup with complete rejection. Is there really no way to avoid drinking this stuff? Well, just a small sip then. Just as the wine was about to touch his lips, an urgent voice interrupted. Lord Isso, don't drink it. Nona crossed her arms and stared intently at the wine cup on the table, then looked at the giant chief. The giant chief's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Having a bad feeling, had this human woman discovered something was wrong? So he hurriedly explained, there's definitely no drugs in this wine. Look, I'm drinking the same wine. This is my precious slime wine that I've been saving for years. But Nona remained persistent, fearlessly facing the giants who were several times her size, shouting, then you drink first. You're the giant chief. You should definitely drink first. The chief looked at the wine in his hand and decided to go all out. What if I sacrifice one person for the future of the giants? Under Nona's intense stare, amidst the gurgling bubbles in the wine cup, cold sweat breaking out on his back, he couldn't take it anymore. He slammed the wine cup on the table and berated them. You disrespectful humans. If it weren't for you giving us so much, we would have crushed you with one palm long ago. With that, the giant chief stormed off in embarrassment. But Nona wasn't satisfied, still angry about being called disrespectful earlier. Just as she was about to retort, Odyssey covered her mouth from behind and reminded her, don't, they're giants. We can't beat them. Come on, let me walk you back to rest, okay? Let's not argue with him. And so the banquet finally ended in a mix of noise and quietness. The giants who were supposed to get drunk got drunk. Those who left left, and even the inseparable Odyssey had left Isso's side. Isso now felt to chill down his spine, completely lacking any sense of security. He consoled himself. It's okay. We still have the cold iron cage. I need to get to your side right now. The nights in the snow mountains were bitterly cold by now. It was early morning and a black figure appeared in a mountain valley carrying a huge scythe. Meanwhile, Isso had entered the prepared cage alone and sat down. He had been waiting for this moment for too long. Hearing movement, he opened his eyes, and saw that familiar figure he knew all too well. He slowly spoke. We meet again, Miss Snail. Before Isso could continue, Snail took a swift step forward, emotionlessly holding her side. Isso remained completely calm. Then let me show you your new toy. He raised his hand high and smashed it down on a skull symbol on the ground. A cage instantly crashed down with a resonating boom that echoed throughout the valley. Seeing his success, Isso felt no joy at all. He couldn't help but complain. Who would put the switch inside the trap? The entire snow mountain echoed with 3 words. Odyssey, you idiot. However, looking at Snail, who was now at arm's length, but unable to touch him, their eyes met, neither able to reach the other. Iso spoke. I can't get out and you can't get out either. But then another thought made his confident expression twist into a smirk. Now not only can you not kill me, but you can't escape either. Just accept your fate. Then he saw Snail suddenly swing her side the iron cage. The next moment, Iso watched a fragment fly past his eye, and felt his heart almost stop. A small gap had appeared in the iron cage. Of course, Snail saw it too. She raised her scythe and began grinding against that gap. Her expression cold and movements professional with a scraping sound accompanied by falling iron filings. This made Iso's eyes gradually widen. He recalled Odyssey's words about how this type of iron had almost no resistance to magic attacks. Could it be that scythe had magical properties? While he was pondering, an iron bar fell to the ground. Iso's heartstrings seemed to break along with that iron cage. Then he saw Snail had already stuck half her head through about to crawl in, which terrified him into crying out, "Don't come any closer." Unfortunately, the gap was too small, and Snail couldn't get in, so that familiar sound of sawing iron started again, making Iso feel like he was being tortured. Stay calm. The more dangerous the situation, the more you need to stay calm and think of countermeasures. Suddenly, he noticed the meatball bracelet on her wrist, and thought of something, shouting Vera at Snail. Seeing Snail's reaction, he pointed at her with a wicked smile. "Vera, I advise you to be careful, otherwise I'll tell your parents." This made Snail freeze, staring at him intently. Iso was sweating profusely, afraid it wouldn't work. He added, "Don't underestimate the power of money. I could even send people to find your family or friends when that time comes. I can't guarantee what might happen. After all, you probably don't want them to know about your work as an assassin, right?" Indeed. These words made Snail lower her head, seemingly embarrassed. Iso then took out the dumpling bracelet and said, "We both have proof of being recognized as great eaters, right? Think about that kind old shop owner I've also. In that shop. If I die, that shop owner will lose their source of income. So there's more to this world than just hatred. Come, let's embrace peace and love." Unfortunately, this only sparked overwhelming rage. Snail frantically hacked at the iron cage by now. Iso's face was completely frozen, covered in cold sweat, watching another section of the iron cage being cut away while Snail was crawling in. Is this how it all ends? I haven't even enjoyed life much, yet always running away. Well, I guess this is it. Suddenly there was a sound of clothes tearing. Snail, who had gotten her upper body through, had her clothes torn by a gap in the iron cage. But Snail remained unfazed. Her eyes focused only on finishing off the man before her. But when her lower half was about to enter, she got stuck. Iso saw this scene, and couldn't help but burst out laughing, making Snail blush and look bewildered. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Iso started taunting. "Oh, isn't this Miss Vera? What are you doing here in the middle of the night? Don't tell me you're stuck. Well, then let me show you something special." Then thinking to himself, "Since she can't move, I'll show you my big treasure, the mini portable green breath. Now I'm going to begin. Let me show you the cruelty of society." In the next second, he glued Snail's hands to the iron cage, leaving her unable to move, stuck in a predicament. Now, feeling safe, Iso took out a pen, came to Snail's face and said, "Quick, tell me why you're hunting me. Is it really on God's orders? What would it take to stop your pursuit of me? I'm tired of the rich life. I just want to be free from this life of being hunted and return to peace. Better confess now. Leniency for those who confess, severity for those who resist." When Snail heard this, she ignored Iso even more suddenly, turning her head away. Seeing this reaction, he continued, "You don't seem to understand what a man might do when pushed to his limits." Saying this, he used his pocket pen to draw a little pig nose on Snail's cheek, then added, "Don't underestimate this pen. It's permanent, won't fade away." Snail, humiliated by this treatment, had tears in her eyes, but still maintained a determined gaze at Iso. With no other choice, he used his trump card, snatching the meatball bracelet from Snail's hand. "Give it back." These 3 words clearly reached Iso's ears. But instead of moving him, he suddenly smashed the necklace after 6 months. Countless days and nights so you can speak. This action triggered overwhelming killing intent from Snail. With cold air raging around her, Snail gritted her teeth, looking like she wanted to bite Iso to death. Iso quickly picked up the necklace, dusted it off, and said, "Since you can speak, please honestly, tell me the truth. Otherwise, I can't guarantee where this necklace might end up, maybe in some unicorn's rear end." But all he got in response was that cold stare. This made Iso very angry. He gradually applied force while digging for something, saying, "If that's the case, don't blame me for being ruthless. This blade is coated with a mixture of 81 different poisons. Just a slight scratch on your skin will cause immediate decay. No one can save you. Then not even that old god guy." His smile grew increasingly sinister and wild. He even felt a bit excited while acting deranged. But as he was grinning, something felt wrong. He discovered that one of Snail's bound hands had grabbed his collar. Iso looked down, his expression gradually stiffening, his smile instantly shifting to the face of the dear audience watching. This was the first time in 6 months that Snail had caught him. Iso took a deep breath, trying to make his expression appear kind and friendly while his hands were shaking uncontrollably. "Just kidding. How could I ever harm you?" But Snail remained expressionless as she pulled Iso toward the cage's exterior. Word by word, like a child just learning to speak, "The contract has begun. It won't stop." She forcefully threw Iso aside. These words seemed to answer Iso's question. The contract cannot be stopped. Watching Snail approach, step by step, with scythe in hand, lying on the ground, Iso sighed. "Before I die, I want to know the content of the contract. Consider it my last wish." Snail remained cold, frowning as she replied, "You don't need to know." Iso managed a weak smile, holding up the dumpling bracelet. "I'll trade this for the information." But Snail's next words made him lose all hope. "Eliminating you will get it back anyway." Iso's heart sank. "Well, I guess I'll die with regrets." Just then, Snail uttered 2 words, "Eyes." She continued, "From the moment I find you, until you leave my sight, even if you successfully escape, I just have to wait for the next opportunity." Iso paused, slightly puzzled. So it's about losing sight, but something still didn't add up. After a moment of silence, Snail's cold voice came. "I've said enough at this moment." Iso had already accepted his fate. "So time's up, huh? Well, dying at the hands of such a cute and beautiful girl isn't so bad. I have one last request. Let me put this bracelet on you myself. Let me touch a girl's hand before I die, to fulfill my final regret." This made Snail pause. Then she slowly raised her hand. Seeing this, Iso smiled and began putting the bracelet on her with remarkable speed. "Thank you for giving me this chance. I will treasure this hard-won life well." With a quick backstep, Iso showed his usual mug expression and said, "Although you didn't say it directly, let me make a bold guess. You can only hunt me at night and daytime isn't your domain. Don't forget, we're in the north now, where nights are much shorter than elsewhere." At these words, Snail lowered her head in silence, but soon spoke. So it was all a trick. This immediately made Iso's relieved heart tense up again, and he couldn't help feeling guilty. As Snail raised her head, revealing those blood-red eyes, she continued, "Those guys too, and God too, and even you're like this." Just by making eye contact for that brief moment, Iso felt his heart would jump out of his chest. Seeing Snail constantly spinning her scythe as she approached him, "Now I'm really done for." Snail had already taken her stance, her expression even colder, completely emotionless, raising her scythe to strike at Iso. A flash of white light appeared, and the snow mountain was suddenly split in 2. The iron cage was also destroyed, and Iso only heard a huge blast. Then everything started spinning. This crazy woman had actually cut the mountain in half. Fortunately, Iso was wearing flying shoes, which slowed his fall. But the snail could only stare with those blood-red eyes, grinding their teeth while saying they would never let this go, before being swallowed by the avalanche and disappearing without a trace. The violent tremors drew the attention of many giants. The giants now looked at everything before them in disbelief. One of the giants spoke up, saying they had seen Iso walking alone in this direction yesterday. Before the giant chief could react, a pair of hands grabbed the edge of the cliff. Under the giant's watchful gaze, Iso leapt up with an incredibly cool pose, landing perfectly. But as soon as he looked up, he found himself surrounded by giants. Then suddenly there was a series of thuds as they fell to their knees. This gave Iso quite a shock he hadn't even recovered from earlier. And now what was this about? Then the giant chief spoke up loudly, declaring that all the good giants would pledge eternal loyalty to Lord Iso. Waking up, Odyssey found the battle had already ended. Wondering what exactly happened last night, Isso sat on a giant shoulder deep in thought, slowly replying that he didn't know either. This casual response only made Odyssey more frustrated as he kept asking questions, following closely behind. He couldn't believe that Isso, being directly involved, couldn't remember anything. But Isso gazed into the distance with deep, mysterious eyes, saying it was just a bit inconvenient to discuss. At first, Odyssey didn't understand, but after hearing Isso's words he suddenly had in revelation. Even you are unwilling to recall last night's cruel, bloody, intense and exciting battle. Or could it be that the opponent can alter memories and blur consciousness? At least, tell me the name of that demon. Just then, Nona saw Odyssey walking out of Isso's residence and greeted him. Good morning, Odyssey. But Odyssey seemed not to hear, standing there dazed and mumbling repeatedly, saying, Vertil. Suddenly, he clapped his hands and looked up at Nona saying, Oh, now I understand. But Nona frowned and unable to contain her frustration any longer, she threw a punch saying, What the hell do you understand? Early in the morning, you're being all suspicious and muttering to yourself, Wake up. That punch actually woke Odyssey up, making him suddenly realize there were even more terrifying things in this world. Just knowing that person's name could bring deadly consequences. He immediately said to Nona, I advise you not to dig deeper. This isn't something ordinary people can handle. Confused, Nona went to Isso's side shouting, Odyssey has finally lost his mind. Just as she was about to ask more questions, Isso interrupted and changed the subject. Miss Nona, how have you been enjoying these past few days? You seem very happy. How about this? I'll leave half the caravan to accompany you until you've had enough fun before heading back. The sudden inquiry caught Nona off guard. Still dwelling on his earlier comment, she was thinking about the gap between her fantasy and reality before coming to the Northland. Then she suddenly realized, where are you going? Is this carefully planned snow mountain trip ending so soon? Meanwhile, Isso had already made up his mind, his determined eyes seeming to tell Nona his resolve couldn't be shaken. I need to find a woman who is extremely important to me. As soon as he finished speaking, a punch sent Isso flying, turning and running away, crying, You wooden-headed fool. This left Isso completely puzzled, wondering why things turned out this way. But right now, the most important thing was how to deal with Snail. That one wouldn't die so easily. And this time, he had gathered the most intelligence, yet he had to uncover the truth behind everything. So he found Shelly, and described Snail to her humanoid form, rare race, female, just as he was about to ask about height and appearance. Upon hearing it was a woman, she paused for a moment before saying she would start searching as soon as they returned to Loxy City. But Isso suddenly grabbed Shelly's hand forcefully and shouted, This matter is extremely important to me. It's like entrusting my life to you. Although she didn't know who this woman was to Isso, it didn't matter anymore. He had entrusted his life to her. Blushing, she turned and left, leaving behind one request. It would be better if you could provide a portrait. Isso thought about it. Indeed, having a portrait would be very convenient. But where to find an artist? As if arranged by heaven, a shout came from nearby. Let me go. I'm the painter accompanying Lord Isso's caravan. These are all important historical records. The one named Andrew knew very clearly that if she could return and leave behind a painting or two as a witness to this great journey, it would surely become a timeless classic. Isso slowly approached, picked his photo up from the ground, and thought this might work. When Andrew came to Isso's side, she was very excited, and after some discussion, introduced herself as a realist painter. Isso stared intently at the work on the easel. Was this art? But this wasn't what he wanted. At this time, Isso's caravan had already started their journey back. The giants were all crying, very reluctant to say goodbye, waving and saying, Welcome back, Lord Isso. We'll build an Isso theme park here. Finally got rid of these troublemakers. Back in the caravan, after some twists and turns, they finally got the painting. However, it was quite different from what Isso had imagined. She was painted as dignified and holy, like a beautiful saint, but this had absolutely nothing to do with the actual person. Meanwhile, Andrew spoke up. I didn't expect to see this outfit a second time. In one of my travels in a remote village, I saw some strange people all wearing these kinds of clothes. Very bizarre. At this moment, Isso thought he was about to find Snail's whereabouts. Soon after, the whole city was celebrating Isso's triumphant return. In the Halo City Merchant Guild, Isso slammed the portrait on the table, and shouted, Find this person for me immediately. I need all information about her. Like I said, money is no object. At this time, Isso was surrounded by snails. Suddenly, the snail transformed into the girl who was hunting him. Iso jerked awake. Ever since last week's encounter, he had been having dreams. Dreams of that woman. He couldn't stop thinking about needing time to recover the shock after waking up. Just then, a knock on the door instantly woke him up. Opening the door, he saw the merchant guild manager, who respectfully said, "Lord Iso, as per your instructions, we've launched missing person notices nationwide. Additionally, there's another matter. We'd like to appraise the giant race specialties you brought back." Then, with a sly smile, he continued, "Even some wealthy people with countless assets can't forget their first love. You seem to be quite the romantic. I wonder what kind of person this woman is." But Iso was quite exasperated. That woman who was chasing him in his mind every moment made him shudder. Rather than heartwarming, it was more like something that could make one's heart stop beating. Out on the street, buildings were covered with banners. Crowds filled the streets, very lively, just like the Lantern Festival. Except this time it was celebrating Iso's triumphant return. They even set up a platform in the town center with Iso's portrait hanging on it, where the caravan's artist was giving an impassioned speech, constantly switching between his drawings, telling stories vividly. Children were in awe. Women couldn't help but blush. At this point, the artist pulled out another drawing and excitedly announced, "This painting shows the scene of Lord Ioso confronting the giant chief. Only one copy available, just 998. Hurry and buy it." Meanwhile, in another area, the unicorn, considered a divine beast by people, was surrounded by children. Something they might not see once in their lifetime was now right before them. Suddenly, a leg flew in from the side, kicking a child to the ground, accompanied by an angry shout, "Get lost, you! Country bumpkins are dirtying the divine beast." Then two figures approached from behind him. "What are you doing? Why are you making a scene in broad daylight?" The other yellow-haired girl frowned, walking straight toward the little boy, saying, "Our task is to retrieve the unicorn. If any incidents occur, you can't bear the punishment from above." Stroking the boy's head, she said, gently, "Does it still hurt? I'm so sorry we didn't watch our companion properly. He's mentally challenged." When the boy heard this, he said, sympathetically, "Oh, that's why. If he's mentally challenged, then I forgive him." The young man heard this and became furious. The yellow-haired girl said, in a pitying tone, "Look, he's about to have an episode. Poor thing." The man shouted, "My uncle is the manager of the merchant guild." Before he could finish, a flying kick came from afar, accompanied by a shout of, "You brat." The manager angrily scolded, "I brought you here to broaden your horizons. Don't think wearing nice clothes makes you nobility." But the young man was even more defiant, immediately retorting, "Isn't the person who hired the unicorn just a nouveau riche?" The manager's brow furrowed, waving his hand and continuing to shout, "How can this person be nouveau riche? This is the people's hero, Lord Iso. How dare you compare yourself to him?" Upon hearing it was Lord Iso, the yellow-haired girl nearby excitedly rushed forward, saying, "Lord Iso, your achievements have already spread throughout the royal palace. Even the king is very interested in you. Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm Chesma, a scholar of ancient civilizations, responsible for retrieving the unicorn this time, and also oversee divine beast protection work. I'm a researcher at the Royal Academy's Sacred Objects Department." Iso immediately became interested. Meanwhile, Nona returned to her home, crying and shouting, "Dad, I'm not clean anymore. I'm not clean anymore." At that moment, Conde felt his blood rush to his head. As a severe daughter, complex and experienced man, he immediately imagined a series of dramatic scenarios without asking any questions. He shouted, "You bastard, today is your death day," and rushed out the door. While Nona muttered quietly, "I stepped in dog poop on my way home. Such bad luck." Turning her head to look, her father was already gone. The butler nearby spoke up, "Young miss, you're still as impetuous as ever. This journey probably wasn't very successful in a certain sense. As someone who has watched you grow up, I can't just stand by. Let me teach you how to make the opposite sex fall in love with you." Meanwhile, Chesma gratefully said, "And there's also the lost paintings from the ancient royal ruins you protected. These are all of great, real-world significance." This made Iso feel a bit embarrassed, thinking to himself, "Really need to thank you, Snail, for doing so many good deeds for me." Suddenly remembering something, he immediately put on a troubled expression and said, "To be honest, I've been researching a lost race recently, and it's giving me a headache." Since this matched her expertise, Chesma became interested, quickly responding, This could be a world-shaking discovery. So Isso immediately agreed, smoothly, getting her to join. But suddenly a shout came from afar. "You bastard! After taking advantage of my daughter, you're here deceiving other young girls." The guards restraining him said, "Lord Isso." This man suddenly went crazy and rushed into the merchant guild, breaking the ancient scepter. But Kande didn't care about any scepter compared to his daughter's chastity. What did that matter? Chesma looked closely and quickly said, "Could this be the ancient scepter that Lord Isso just excavated, which caused many small countries to go crazy with war? This is an ancient relic." Kande's face instantly turned pale, his eyes widening as he immediately shouted, "I'll pledge my daughter as collateral. Please spare my life." Just then, Isso stepped forward, saying, "Enough. It's just a broken piece of wood breaking. It doesn't matter." And during the journey, Nona always slept with Shelly. "Please don't misunderstand. I have urgent matters to attend to. Don't disturb me anymore." Soon after, Isso received news that someone had found the location of that village. It was in a remote place and extremely mysterious, impossible to reach by land. Now there was only one way through the supreme cloud peak. At this time, at the meatball shop, the owner looked at this familiar figure and said, "Lord Isso indeed has a bracelet of the same style. And you look very similar to a previous customer. Are you his sister?" At the Kanda household, what exactly is love? Can forced love even be considered love? And these words actually came from her own father's mouth. Young people should have a passionate romance. Besides that, Lord Isso is indeed quite outstanding. What Kanda was thinking was, if that guy regrets it later, that broken stick, even my life savings wouldn't be enough to compensate him for it. Only by becoming family. He quickly coughed a few times. "Nona, I'm not just saying this, but you need to hurry and get closer to Lord Isso." In contrast, Nona looked completely exhausted and desperate. "It's no use, I've tried my best. After all, there are always bees around flowers. But now I can't even get close to Lord Isso's heart." But Kande still persisted in persuading back then. "Your mother didn't love me either. But your old dad eventually succeeded through personality and talents, cutting through thorns and blazing a trail. Though money was involved, being wealthy is also a kind of charm. At least, everyone will love him unconditionally." But Nona didn't see it that way. This isn't true, sincere love at all. And besides, Lord Isso doesn't lack money. At this time, the butler couldn't help but lean in. "I heard that Blacksmith Boy is often with Lord Isso. Could it be some special interest?" Only to hear Nona continue. "He rushed back this time just to find a woman called Vera Shelley, and I are in the same situation. If they can't find her, they won't look my way." When Kande and the butler heard this, they said in unison, "At least he's still interested in women." They went on to say that someone of his status and position still having someone he can't forget must be extremely special. Nona immediately thought about it with furrowed brows. Could it be first love? Then don't I have even less chance? Kaunde was even more certain. Yes, that's exactly it. That person must be the moonlight in Lord Isso's heart. As long as we use reality to shatter his ideal, let Lord Isso discover that the woman called Vera is already married and is an ugly woman covered in freckles with a runny nose. Won't his heart be broken? The more Nona listened, the less confident she felt. How could that Vera be such an ordinary person? Candy continued in a lowered voice, "But we can make her be that way." Nona immediately understood and was shocked. "You mean to create a fake Vera to destroy Lord Isso's memories? How despicable, you scumbag father." Kanda turned with a serious face ready to set out. "You must remember, love is war. You need to use whatever means necessary to persist until the end to be the winner. As a businessman, moral integrity can't be used to make a living." Nona, having inherited Kande's genes, had an exceptionally keen sense. She suspected, "Dad, your attitude has changed 360 degrees compared to before. Did Lord Isso catch you doing something wrong? I advise you to confess while you can." Meanwhile, at the Hale City Merchant Guild, Isso looked at a letter in his hand. Lost in thought and listening to the artist in Odyssey's argument, he couldn't help but speak up. "Do you have any more clues about that mysterious race?" Hearing this, the two ended their argument and explained. A town called Amaru is an extremely remote village located outside the borders of the Dawn Kingdom. According to records, the Death Race lived there since ancient times, also known as the Eternal Night Race. Until today, this race has disappeared, with only some villagers claiming to be their descendants. Now, the only way to reach there is by riding dragons. Our plan is to try to get on their good side. They don't actually hate humans. Rather, in their eyes, humans are like cats and dogs. Just by offering some food and such, there's a possibility of communication. This is the only way now. Just then, the door was violently knocked, and from outside came Lord Isso. I've brought the Vera you're looking for. This startled Isso, almost calling out, and just as he was about to turn and run, but he found a masculine-looking woman standing at the door, making him dumbfounded. What kind of creature was this? Wearing a snail-style outfit and throwing a flirtatious wink at Isso. You're finally willing to take responsibility for that passionate night. Instantly, a bright rainbow appeared in the room as Isso vomited in disgust. The woman was pushed out by staff like they were herding cattle, occasionally shouting loudly, "I am the Vera that Lord Isso has been thinking about day and night since I came all this way. At least reimburse my travel expenses." Hearing this, Isso sighed, "Then give them some money to go back." At this time, the Merchant Guild manager broke out in cold sweat. "I'm afraid I don't recommend you do that." Saying this, he pushed open the window. Isso looked carefully and was stunned. An endless sea of black as far as the eye could see. Isso stood frozen, then turned to look at the manager. Following a door closing, sound Lord Isso, "I'll have them dispersed right away." Meanwhile, on the street, Nona was pulling her father, her face red with anger, shouting, "To actually pawn off your own daughter. I can't believe you did that. Come with me to apologize to Lord Isso." Conde panicked, his face turning extremely ugly. "Do you know how much that broken stick costs? Even selling everything we own wouldn't be enough to compensate." Hearing this, Nona's tears flowed uncontrollably, feeling very wronged. "First, he saved my life, and now we owe him so much money. This debt of gratitude can never be repaid in a lifetime. It's all Dad's fault. Now, Lord Isso must think I'm just a troublesome, unlikable woman." Conde quickly stepped forward and patted Nona's shoulder to comfort her. "Nona, if you just follow my plan, although you'll lose your dignity, your old dad will gain a good son-in-law." The next second, a handprint appeared on Conde's face. "You gained nothing." Pulling Conde toward the association, determined to teach her father a lesson. Just then, Nona's little fist hit a steel plate. The other person shouted, "What are you pushing for? Don't you know the rules? If you want to be Vera, go line up in the back." Nona slowly turned her head, looking at the fierce-looking, muscular person behind her puzzled. She asked, "Is this the Vera that Lord Isso has been looking for? Is she nearby?" Instantly, countless faces around her looked at Nona and said, in unison, "Are you calling me?" This scene startled Nona. Two more professional performers came forward. "You little girl also want to compete for the name of Vera. This is a stage for charming women." Not understanding what was happening, Nona immediately gave her own name, but what she faced was a burst of laughter. "You can't even remember the name, but want to come make money? Little sister, I suggest you first go read the missing person notice." After tossing her a piece of paper, the two left. Nona looked at the missing person notice in her hand, looking for Vera. She was stunned. "I can't believe that unlucky dad actually guessed right. Is your story going to spread across the world?" After understanding the cause and effect, she stared blankly at the sky alone and at a loss. The notice in her hand was the fairy tale story she had always dreamed of. Unfortunately, she wasn't the protagonist of the story, just like a clown, tired and destined for destruction, but still holding on to a glimmer of hope, thinking, what if Lord Isso gets rejected? Then if she appears at that time, she could fill the void in Lord Isso's heart. She suddenly started grinning foolishly. But just then, a black figure caught her attention. Such a small child. Could it be that their family was too poor and their parents sent them here to make money? Meanwhile, the Merchant Guild manager cleared his throat and announced, "After investigation, there was a problem on our organizing side. To show our apologies, everyone present can get a free loaf of bread until supplies run out. Please leave in an orderly manner after receiving your compensation. This event is now over." The crowd below protested, "Get out of here, frauds." While at the bread distribution area, a childish voice came through, "And Vera want that one." One of the young women was immediately attracted. "Little sister, are you also Vera? How cute." Her hand pointed straight toward the biggest loaf of bread on the shelf. A young woman nearby was about to suggest that it was too big and maybe she should chew. Another one when the short-haired young woman cut indecisively, "I believe in her. Because she has eyes that show ultimate respect for food, she can't possibly be an ordinary person." Soon after, Snail hugged a piece of bread almost as big as herself, and walked to Nona's side, sat down beside her. Nona watched the girl devour half the bread in one bite, couldn't help exclaiming how cute she was. then inadvertently noticed the bracelet on the girl's wrist. It was actually the same style as Lord Isso's. Feeling a bit embarrassed, she opened up, "Little sister, would you sell your meatball bracelet to big sister? I'll give you a bag of gold coins. Then you can go to school properly without having to come out to make money." Speaking of this, she recalled that the meatball shop owner had mentioned there was only one pair of these. Just as she wanted to confirm this, suddenly, the little girl started hiccuping. A worried Nona immediately stood up. "Did you eat too fast? I'll go find some water right now." Watching Nona's retreating figure, Snail stood up, walking straight toward a dark corner. At that moment, she grew up. Just then a crisp sound came from nearby. Snail turned her head to see Nona, their eyes meeting for a moment, neither knowing what to say. Meanwhile, at the window of the tall building, Isso watched the gradually thinning crowd below. He couldn't help but sigh. "This is really tough." The Merchant Guild manager reluctantly stepped forward, saying, "We were indeed underprepared this time. Forgive my boldness, but hearing your plans earlier, perhaps you need magical support. You might have heard of the Cradle's name. Here is our cooperation main plate. That's the Mages Association in the royal capital. Similar to the Merchants General Assembly in the magic world. Everyone there is talented." But Isso felt a bit awkward at this moment because he had some minor friction with them before this. Later being dragged by the association manager to the Mages Association's front gate, the manager explained, "It's just that mages all have somewhat strange personalities. It surely won't be a problem." But not far away, there was a portrait with a notice. "If found within the academy, please kill on sight. The academy will award the highest honor title." Because none of the mages who had previously helped him had returned unscathed, the manager didn't think much of it, just pondered briefly before remembering. He had a distant relative who had just graduated from the Cradle. Isso immediately gave a thumbs up, indicating he was willing to pay 10 times the price. 2.5 hours later, a pair of pink pupils looked Isso up and down. The two just stared at each other. But when Isso was about to grab an apple, with a whoosh, the pink-haired girl who had been sitting on the sofa suddenly appeared beside Isso, holding the apple. A proud voice came through, "Younger than I imagined." This was the manager's distant relative, Cradle graduate, Celine. Isso immediately became interested, not in her but in the magic she had just demonstrated, and couldn't help asking, "Can you teach me this magic?" Celine took a bite of the apple and directly said, "No." Very disappointed, Isso was thinking, if he had this magic, escaping wouldn't be so casual. Lying down lazily and complaining, "I really want to learn. Teach me. Can it be learned quickly?" Hearing this, Celine smiled. "What do you think this is? It's not elementary school math, something you can learn just because you want to. The reason I could master it easily was not only my exceptional talent, but also my master, the world-renowned great sage Magellan." Isso suddenly recalled the past hiding behind a rock. Isso watched that confident figure and cheered, "Professor Mac, I'm counting on you." And then there was no and then he barely escaped with his life after taking one hit. Celine, completely unaware, continued, "And then there's Aren Sr., who's called the future light of our cradle." Isso remained silent. At that time, that person decided to use mental attacks, wanting to turn Snail into a fool. But unexpectedly, Snail's side could reflect mental attacks, and then she was affected by her own magic and became a pervert. Sighing as she spoke, Celine said, "Thinking about the school's past, I really want to go back and see it right away." But she was directly interrupted by Isso. "Forget about it. Join my team right now." Then he started planning the itinerary. They had to leave immediately. They needed to arrive there tonight. Hearing they had to leave right away, Celine, who wanted to go to the academy, couldn't help but ask why the rush. Behind her, Odyssey became nervous, though the nervousness was mixed with a little anticipation. Finally able to witness the demon's appearance, Isso walked to the window and gazed at the sky, his words showing unexpected vicissitudes. "Trust me, you wouldn't want to meet her." Just then, Isso looked down at the window and saw a familiar figure. It was Nona. She was waving, anxiously, going up to tell Isso. After describing what had happened, Isso, with a grave expression, found it hard to believe you saw young Vera. Nona described while gesturing, not that kind of young Vera, but like a child, instantly turning into an adult. Just as she was about to say the location, she suddenly got stuck. Nona felt her head becoming fuzzy, unable to remember anything. Seeing her, unable to speak for a long time, Isso's patience ran out, thinking Candy had sent Nona to act crazy and joke around. After all, Vera was very important to him, a matter of life and death. This made Nona even more anxious, just as she was about to explain, but was interrupted by Iso again, saying he was heading to the next location. But Nona, unwilling to give up, anxiously shouted, "Even if it kills me, I would never deceive Lord Iso. I must prove myself." 2.5 hours later, Odyssey, who was traveling together, couldn't help but speak up. "So this is your reason for coming with us?" Nona immediately retorted righteously, "Aren't you going to find Vera? I'm just here to prove I wasn't lying." Celine turned her head to look at the lineup for this trip: rich upstart blacksmith and crazy rich girl. Saying they're going to the Dragon Mountain range, she had some bad feelings about this. Just then, the bad feeling came true. An attack directly hit the carriage. It went straight off the cliff. Inside the carriage, Iso hurriedly called out to Odyssey. He was already prepared, and immediately pulled the lever. The carriage instantly transformed into an iron ball. After continuous collisions, they landed safely. Fortunately, they had brought the mechanized carriage left from the ancient battlefield. What was puzzling was that they were still very far from the dragon's nest. Why were they suddenly attacked? But when Iso looked out the window, he saw the dragon grabbing the iron ball, lifting it and flying toward the sky. Odyssey regretted, "I'm sorry. Can I resign?" Then they were carried to an unknown location by the dragon. The iron ball was thrown straight to the ground, shattered and smoke-filled. Fortunately, they weren't injured. After finally recovering and looking around, they were at the Supreme Cloud Peak. This huge mountain peak was the dragon's lair. Just as they were at a loss, human voices came from behind. "Is that Lord Iso?" All four of them turned their heads to look. In a basement corner, two people emerged upon seeing Iso. They were very happy. After some understanding, Iso learned that they had instructed the dragons to capture him, hoping he could treat the Dragon Queen's illness. Although dragons had extremely high intelligence, they still needed human help. Moreover, the queen's condition was very critical. Iso stared blankly at the two people before speaking. "You're actually twin old men." The pair heard this, but weren't angry, and explained that they were biologists specifically studying dragons and then discovered the queen was sick. The rest would be explained by the person behind him. Iso was still completely puzzled as he turned around, only to see a very uniquely dressed man who looked like a primitive human walking over. Holding his head rather embarrassedly, he spoke, "Really sorry for startling you, mainly because the city doctors all ran away scared when they heard about treating dragons." Because he often went to Halo City himself and always saw Iso's portraits, knowing he was capable. That's why he resorted to this method. After hearing this, Iso was devastated inside, but facing the man's desperate pleading expression, who then said this virus would spread to the entire dragon clan, after which the enraged dragons would continuously attack nearby towns. Iso finally realized the severity of the problem. If he got attacked, everything would be over, so he immediately agreed. The group came before the Dragon Queen. The strange man gently stroked the queen and began explaining what had happened. Everything started with an egg. After the queen laid an egg that looked like a stone, her illness began. And to suppress the spread of the toxin, the Dragon Queen, disregarding her own safety, stayed by the egg all day. Just then, Celine, being a top Magic Academy graduate, immediately noticed something was wrong. "This isn't poison, it's a curse." She immediately began preparing a potion. The twin biologists also participated in the production, discovering that this curse seemed to form naturally, like the dragon's genes, protecting against foreign invasion. And the dragon race had always reproduced in isolation, causing blood lineage solidification. But now suddenly, combining with other bloodlines caused such a reaction. The next second, bang, an instant explosion. The conclusion is that this egg has become a cleaner. After telling everyone the results, the group gathered around the egg. Suddenly the egg slowly floated into the air. It was actually emitting curses, making the dragons go mad. And behind them, the mysterious man, looking at the egg floating in mid-air, swallowed hard. Iso was very puzzled, wondering, why would blood lineage rejection suddenly occur? Again, questioning the two men, "You're the experts, quickly think of a solution. If we delay any longer, it could be fatal." The two men, looking quite embarrassed, could only think of one point. It was caused by an impure relationship. Celine suddenly thought of a solution. As long as there is a purification gem offered by the water elves, the curse of the egg can be directly eliminated. Of course, none of us have seen the gem. After all, it is a sacred object of the elves. After hearing this, Iso pondered for a moment, reaching into his treasure bag and rummaging around while saying, "I have some stones here that glow at night. I wonder if they could be of use. Celine was shocked when she took a look. Those were sacred objects that even the current count had no right to lay eyes on. Yet you have so many really. That's great. Odyssey shouted in panic that the egg was stolen. They saw the strange man tightly holding the egg as he ran continuously muttering, "It's all my fault. If I hadn't lost control of my desires, things wouldn't have turned out this way." Suddenly he stepped on something slippery. The egg immediately flew out of his hands. Limited time return green breath. Then Isso picked up the egg. I didn't expect it to be so heavy. Celine stood nearby with the gemstone chain ready to begin purification. The moment she touched it, the gem surrounded the egg, gradually changing from black to gold. After some shaking, a small crack appeared. A tender little hand broke through the shell. "It's coming out." Isso and Nona looked inside. They saw an adorable half-dragon, half-human creature, stretching lazily. The two looked at each other, thinking, this must be genetic mutation. Celine was quite speechless beside them. This was clearly due to the curse. While behind everyone, a huge bloody mouth had already opened. Fortunately, the queen intervened in time to save them. Because the cursed flying dragon and the egg began to lose control and fall into madness, Isso increasingly felt something was wrong. To survive here alone so peacefully, there must be something they weren't being told. As the truth became clearer, he confessed, "Actually, I am that egg's father." It turned out that a few years ago, this man was framed during a mission. But fortunately, he was saved by the young queen. As time passed, the queen accepted him, and they confessed their feelings to each other. And he had to pay the price for his impulse, as he had crossed that red line. This kind of love transcended species. But who could escape from love's curse? Just as they were surrounded by flying dragons and at a loss what to do, a cry broke the stalemate. Golden light appeared around the egg. The previously rampaging, flying dragons instantly calmed down. The curse was lifted. Perhaps due to the gemstone's effect, the little dragon girl had mutated. The egg's father shed tears of emotion. The queen leaned over to comfort him. "It's finally over. So love can create miracles." But weren't all these troubles caused by love? In the first place, the man with swollen eyes from crying grabbed Isso with both hands, not knowing how to thank him for saving the flying dragon tribe. While Isso said it was nothing, just took some time. They must leave immediately. Just then the queen surprisingly spoke up, startling Isso, saying they could give them a ride, explaining that the ancient seal not only blocked consciousness, but also language. Fortunately, the new queen had broken the seal. Then the group continued their journey. And Nona suddenly thought of a question. How exactly could humans and flying dragons have children together? This question is left for the viewers to answer. Not long after, they arrived at Amaru town. The queen warned that this place had been considered forbidden ground for 100 years. They must not linger, and the townspeople stared at them intently. After all, they need to be very careful of treacherous outsiders. As they walked, they saw a young man with a street stall. Just as he was about to speak, Isso immediately threw out a large bag of coins, took out a picture and asked if he had seen this person. The young man thought for a while, saying he hadn't seen anyone like that in his 100 years here. Isso leaned in closer and quietly asked if there was anything about the Eternal Night race, while the young man pretended to think. After a moment, he said, "That'll cost extra." But Isso wasn't someone to be trifled with, so he let Celine cast some magic. Although Celine was quite annoyed, since they paid they had to do the job. Opening her hand, a spark instantly ignited. Magic still held strong deterrent power in this world. The young man immediately compromised and spoke, explaining that the Eternal Night race was actually made up by the previous generation, to avoid war and conscription. From then on, they lived under this name. Night fell. After settling in at the town inn, Nona complained that this place was creepy. Odyssey said we should be grateful to have a place to stay. But as he spoke, he suddenly realized Celine was missing. Isso said that one got a separate room. Who knows what she up to? Never mind her. You guys go investigate in the streets for a while. Meanwhile, in a hidden room, Celine was mixing various potions while complaining. How dare that nouveau riche order around a future great sage? I'll let you experience the power of my master-servant potion. As luck would have it, Isso pushed open the door right at that moment. She immediately sprayed him. Celine pulled him close, complaining beside him, "I really don't want to take orders from some nouveau riche, even though you paid money. So what? So if I develop this master-servant potion, it will make them obey completely." But first she needed to understand Isou's inner world. When Celine entered, she was stunned. A hellish scene appeared before her. The ground flowed with boiling magma, scorching her face. What had this guy been through? Just then, many dark figures slowly crawled out of the magma. Celine frowned. This was actually mental world defense, meant to resist external invasion. Watching them lunge at Celine. As a future great magician, this level is nothing. Fine. I'll play with you. She charged forward, continuously condensing fireballs in her hand, combined with other magic coordination, skillfully eliminating the shadows one by one. Then a charged laser blast, instantly achieving a double kill. As the surrounding smoke cleared, all were eliminated. Celine was quite relaxed, because next she just needed to find the mental world's master to sign the contract. But just then, she sensed something behind her, thinking it was remaining shadows. But what she didn't expect was, a figure appeared before her, and she screamed, "Help! Help!" At this moment in the room, the two were sleeping sweetly, one above the other, and this scene was witnessed by Odyssey and Nona, red-faced and shocked what exactly was going on. Like an alarm clock had awakened the two in bed, both bleary-eyed, not knowing what happened. But after they looked at each other, the atmosphere instantly became subtle. On one side, Celine discovered her master-servant contract had failed. On the other side, Isou shouted, "Why did you climb on top of me? You're too heavy. Get off." When these words reached Celine's ears, they made her whole body tremble. Was he ordering her? She instantly flashed to the side and knelt down. "Please don't be angry, master. It's all this servant's fault. This servant will be good and obey." This left Isou completely bewildered. What nonsense was she talking about? Truly bizarre. He said this while covering his head and walking out, completely ignoring Nona and Odyssey. What exactly had happened? Nona returned to her room looking at the black robe in the mirror, thinking, could it be that Isou was interested in this outfit? Maybe she should try it on. Try it. She would. Meanwhile, Isou's eyes widened. Bloodshot. He suddenly realized only 2 days remained. The snail was coming soon. Last time it even split a mountain. This time would surely be fatal. Just then, he suddenly noticed something, staring intently at a vendor in the distance. The vendor tried to run upon seeing him, but was caught by Isou, who questioned him repeatedly. The vendor stammered and indicated he hadn't seen that person, but under intense interrogation, he finally gave in. She was the last of the eternal night race, already dead, killed by everyone in town together. Isou grabbed his collar and shouted, "What exactly happened? She wasn't even human." What kind of 7 or 8-year-old child could emotionlessly tear apart a bear with bare hands? Isou broke into a cold sweat. Normal methods couldn't kill her. How did you do it? But since she was still young, then she was easy to trick. So they joined forces with the whole village to play a little trick. This made Isou very anxious, demanding to know what features the girl had, what she looked like. But after so long, they only remembered her blood-red pupils. Unforgettable. Seeing Isou's shocked expression, he continued, "You're not looking for her, or are you? But she's already." But Isou ignored all this, dragging the vendor to show him where the body was buried, to investigate. Soon, the two arrived at a deep forest. The vendor was very nervous. "This is my first time digging up someone's grave. Isn't it a bit disrespectful?" Isou was very angry. The murderer himself was not worthy of respect. But when the vendor dug it open, he was shocked. The coffin was empty, but he clearly saw her die, all her blood drained. This left Isou very confused. Could this be a special ability of the Death Clan? Looking at the coffin opening, "You killers were quite kind, making a coffin for someone you murdered." But the vendor replied, "This wasn't our doing. We were all too scared and stayed far away. It was all done by a strange old woman, acting very frightened, seeking everyone's approval. After all, no one wanted to handle such an unlucky thing. It must be that old woman who saw the little monster wasn't dead and saved her. Could she be trying to get us killed? That little monster will surely return for revenge. How terrible. I'll gather people now to burn that old hag to death." Isou could no longer contain himself and kicked him into the coffin. "You people truly deserve to die. Quickly tell me that old person's address. Otherwise this will be your home. I'll give you 1 night. The town isn't that big anyway." But the vendor indicated that finding the old woman would be very difficult. Yet Isou didn't care about any of that, saying it was his problem to solve. Otherwise he'd let him taste magic roasted meat. Returning from the graveyard, Isou was still contemplating life's big questions. thinking that person also had such a tragic childhood. Since she didn't die, wouldn't it be better to live well? Perhaps under that pursuit warrant, she was also a victim. He couldn't keep running away somehow, feeling this would be the final battle. Passing by Odyssey, he was asked if he found any clues, but Isso said he had some leads, and believed it would be resolved soon. He also asked him to call Nona for dinner. Arriving at the door, he knocked, then pushed it open. But the moment he entered, his eyes suddenly widened. That outfit, he would recognize it even in death. But then he thought again. This timing wasn't right. But at this distance, even turning to run wouldn't be fast enough. So Isso suddenly charged forward, grabbing from behind, giving it his all. He wanted to know why they wouldn't leave him alone. Year after year. Back then he should have refused that god, even if it meant death. What kind of contract was that? Treating people like fools for fun. Today, even if he died, he would demand answers from that god. But under Isso's actions, the other person didn't fight back, but tried to escape. So he yanked off their black robe. But to Isso's surprise, it came off completely. But he couldn't care about these details. His mind focused only on fighting for his life, launching an attack from behind. Yet Isso hadn't realized that the black-robed woman was actually Nona. With a puzzled face, recalling Isso's words that whatever happened was destined. Could he mean it was destined? Perhaps he had such intentions toward her all along. Just then, Isso pounced, because he didn't want to run away anymore. Nona knocked down lying on the ground, mumbled, "It's okay. If it's Lord Isso, it's okay, but you must take responsibility afterward." The moment Nona spoke, Isso in the black robe instantly stopped his fierce attack. What responsibility? Wait, why does this voice sound familiar? Hurriedly lifting the black robe. When he saw clearly, his face instantly turned red. "Nona, why is it you? Why aren't you wearing clothes?" Nona was also confused. Hadn't he torn off her clothes himself? She got up and charged at him, shouting, "Isso, you bastard," then knocked him unconscious. When Isso opened his eyes again, he immediately sat up, shouting, "Nona, I didn't mean to." But it was Odyssey who answered, saying Nona had already been taken out by locals, and she left a message for Isso that she had misjudged him all along, which made Odyssey very curious about what had happened. Isso stuttered at hearing this. Feeling nervous inside, he repeatedly said it was nothing, then quickly changed the subject, pointing at the worn book in Odyssey's hand, asking where he got it. But Odyssey explained, this wasn't just any old book, it was very expensive. He found it with great difficulty from the town's old library, managing to find this notebook recording the Eternal Night Race from 100 years ago. Isso immediately leaned forward to look. The book recorded that the Eternal Night Race's power strength would change with time, unleashing powerful force once night fell. Isso frowned. This detail matched up, then continued reading. The Eternal Night Race had suffered ruthless massacre, which led to them becoming extremely skilled at concealing themselves. Odyssey remarked thoughtfully that this race had truly suffered, then looked at the last thing recorded in the book. The Eternal Night Race had poor memory. Isso paused upon hearing this. Just then, a voice came from downstairs, the vendor calling, "Boss, I found the person." Hearing this, Isso planned to leave immediately. He knocked on his bodyguard's door, saying it was time to get up and work. On the other side of the door, Celine could hardly contain herself, blushing red upon seeing Isso. "You've come, master." As they walked, she asked, "Master, where are we going?" Isso hadn't yet realized the seriousness of the situation with all the blushing and calling him master. He just replied, "We're going to find a very, very important old person." After 2.5 hours of long journey, the surroundings became increasingly desolate. As a magician, Celine could barely keep going, constantly asking how much further. The vendor ahead turned back, saying, "We're almost there. Just hang on a bit longer." This made Isso somewhat impatient, questioning if he was playing some trick. The vendor immediately replied firmly, "How dare I deceive you? I've been searching for several nights." This mysterious old person's mental state and memory aren't very normal. But Isso wasn't worried at all. Having experienced countless major situations, he knew what to do. Looking up at the distance, thinking another person with memory problems, but he felt like he was missing something very important. Though, at this point, they could only continue forward. After walking a bit further, a small house appeared in everyone's sight. Celine, who had been walking at the back, finally sighed in relief upon seeing the house. She suddenly became energetic, already thinking about which magic to use, wanting to rush right in. But just then, a pair of hands suddenly grabbed her, pulling her back. Celine looked back in confusion. She saw Isso frowning, criticizing her behavior as very impolite, asking, what if they scared the old person into fainting? Didn't she understand the virtue of respecting elders? Celine was completely bewildered. What respect for elders? This kind of virtue is not popular in the society of this era. A somewhat exasperated Isso waved his hand, not bothering to explain further, saying he would go communicate verbally first. After knocking on the door several times, an elderly woman slowly opened the door, looking at them with slight surprise, as people rarely came here. After Isso's explanation, the old woman led them inside, because Isso said they were tourists who had gotten lost after walking for a long time. Getting lost here was quite careless indeed. Then Isso went straight to the point, saying he heard the last of the Eternal Night race lived here. So they came to see, but the real Eternal Night race seemed very fierce. It might be dangerous if they actually met one. The old lady smiled slightly after hearing this. You must have gathered quite some courage to come then. After all, human hearts aren't simply black or white. It's really unfair to label an entire race based on just a rumor. Everything that exists in the world is arranged by fate. I've seen too many foolish people try to interfere. Isso expressed his own view after hearing this, saying, many things in this world are unreasonable. Perhaps the gods' minds broke down and they couldn't manage everything. The old lady smiled at this young man. You speak quite interestingly, but the world's rules haven't tilted yet. Someone always has to bear that part of the pain. Isso pondered thoughtfully. If choosing with unequal conditions, he would rather forever. The old lady's laughter interrupted Isso as she slowly stood up, muttering to herself, seems like it's time for breakfast. No, did I eat or not? Meanwhile, Isso was still immersed in his thoughts. Could she really not know anything? The clues would be cut off again. Just then, the old lady spoke again, asking what day of the week it was. Isso instantly replied, like a conditioned response, it's Saturday, because this was a matter of life and death he couldn't possibly forget. But what the old lady said next made his jaw drop. My Vera has caused you quite a lot of trouble, haven't she? I'm so sorry that you suffered a lot.